So hey anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto Defeated Uchiha Clan and Become King? So let's start the series. The memorial stone stood where it always had, a polished slab of black granite nestled in the quietest corner of Konoha. The names carved into its surface were countless, a litany of the dead that spanned generations. Naruto Uzumaki stood before it, his hands buried deep in the pockets of his Hokage Haori. The weight of the garment, ceremonial white with red flames along the hem, was a familiar pressure on his shoulders now. It had been 3 years since the war ended. 3 years since Kagaya had been sealed. 3 years since the world had, for the first time in its bloody history, known something resembling peace. It was not a loud peace. It was fragile, held together by treaties written in exhaustion and the mutual fear of another extinction-level event. Naruto found that the silence of this peace was sometimes harder to bear than the chaos of war. In war, the path was clear. Here, in the quiet, the doubts crept in. A faint scuff of a sandal on the path behind him. He didn't turn. "You're brooding," Shikamaru's voice came, calm and observational. "It doesn't suit you." Naruto offered a small, tired smile. "Just thinking. You know. Dangerous habit." Shikamaru moved to stand beside him, his gaze also falling on the stone. He looked older, the lines of his face a little deeper, a testament to the thousands of decisions he'd made as the Hokage's chief strategist. "Sakura said you'd be here. She also said you skipped dinner again." "I wasn't hungry." "You're always hungry. That's how we know something's wrong." Shikamaru paused, letting the silence settle. "Is it the border skirmishes? The land of Earth is rattling sabers again, but it's posturing. They don't have the economy for a real war." "It's not that." Naruto finally turned from the stone. His eyes, once a vibrant, guileless blue, now held a depth that came from seeing too much. They were the eyes of a commander. "It feels too easy, Shika. This peace. Like we're all just holding our breath." Shikamaru considered this. He was a master of reading between the lines, of seeing the 10 moves ahead that others missed. He saw the shadows under Naruto's eyes, the tension in his jaw that never seemed to fully relax. "The sage's power," Shikamaru said quietly. "It lets you sense things the rest of us can't. What are you feeling?" Naruto didn't answer immediately. He reached out with his senses, past the village walls, past the familiar chakra signatures of his friends and comrades. He felt the pulse of the land, the quiet hum of nature's energy. And beneath it all, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor. Like a distant earthquake too far away to hear, but close enough to feel in your bones. "Something old," Naruto murmured. "Something waiting. It's not like Madara or Kagaya. It's coiled. Patient." He looked at Shikamaru. "I thought after we beat her, the cycle would end. That the hatred would finally have nowhere left to grow. But it's still there. Just underground." Shikamaru's expression grew serious. He had learned never to dismiss Naruto's instincts. They were the instincts that had ended a war. "I'll increase the long-range sensor patrols. Double the rotation at the border outposts." "It won't matter," Naruto said, a grim certainty in his voice. "If it's coming, walls and patrols won't stop it." 200 miles west of Konoha, in the mountains that bordered the ruins of the old Uchiha, the ground split open without a sound. It did not crack or crumble, it simply ceased to exist in a perfect circle, revealing a staircase carved from obsidian that spiraled down into an impossible darkness. From this wound in the earth, a figure emerged. He was tall, with long, dark hair that cascaded down his back like a waterfall of ink. His skin was pale, the color of old parchment. He wore simple, dark robes, devoid of any clan symbol or ornamentation. But it was his eyes that held the void. They were Sharingan, but not as any living shinobi knew them. The tomo did not spin, they existed in a state of permanent, complex stasis, patterns within patterns that hurt to look at directly, as if one's mind was trying to process a geometry that didn't exist. This was Izanagi. The Uchiha king. He took a single step onto the grass, and the world around him seemed to dim, colors leaching away as if his very presence was a drain on reality. He looked at the sky, at the sun, with the detached curiosity of a scholar examining a fossil. "So this is the piece they built," he said, his voice a low, resonant hum that vibrated in the chest rather than the ears. "Built on the corpse of my principles." He began to walk, his feet not quite touching the ground. Behind him, the chasm sealed itself, leaving no trace it had ever existed. He moved through the forests like a ghost, passing deer that didn't startle and birds that didn't fly. To them, he simply wasn't there. He was between moments, existing in the gaps of perception. His destination was a small, forgotten shrine in the mountains, a place so saturated with old death that even animals avoided it. As he approached, a figure detached itself from the shadow of the torii gate. Madara Uchiha. He was clad in his iconic armor, his expression unreadable. But where once his eyes had burned with the ambition of the infinite Tsukuyomi, they were now clear. Present. You came, Madara said. It was not a greeting, but an observation. You called, Izanagi replied, stopping a few feet away. He regarded Madara with the same clinical interest he had shown the sun. You, who sought to trap the world in a dream. You, who failed. Why should I heed the call of a failure? Madara did not flinch. The words were not insults, they were data points. Because you see what I see. This piece is a farce. Hashirama's dream, twisted into something stagnant. They have stopped evolving. They worship the dead and ignore the lessons of the living. Izanagi's eyes, those terrifying fractal eyes, narrowed slightly. And you believe I care for evolution? I believe you care for control. Madara stepped forward. I read the old stones, the ones even the clan elders forgot. You weren't just a king. You were the architect. You built the Uchiha into what we became. You gave us the Sharingan not as a gift, but as a tool. A leash. You believed the only way to prevent the strong from devouring the weak was to make the strong the shepherds. Izanagi was silent for a long moment. The wind died. The very air seemed to thicken. Then, a sound that might have been a chuckle. You understand more than I anticipated. The Senju preached love. A beautiful, fragile lie. I preached order. The Senju's way leads to this, a tentative peace built on the graves of the fallen, waiting to be shattered by the first ambitious fool. My way prevents the fall. The shinobi world is a child playing with fire, Madara agreed. They need a parent. A firm hand. You wish to be that hand? Izanagi asked, a hint of genuine amusement in his tone. You, who were bested by a child. Madara's jaw tightened, the only crack in his calm facade. I underestimated the variable of the heart. Naruto Uzumaki is powerful, yes. But his power is rooted in connection, in trust. A beautiful, fragile lie, as you said. It makes him predictable. It gives him something to lose. We do not have that weakness. Izanagi considered this. He looked past Madara, into the darkness of the shrine, as if seeing through it to the village beyond. The Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. The one they call a hero. He feels us. A faint ripple, but a ripple nonetheless. He has more of the sage's blood in him than he knows. He turned his terrifying gaze back to Madara. You will not underestimate him again. It will not be a battle of power, Madara stated, falling into step beside the ancient king. It will be a battle of conviction. And when we show him that his precious connections are the very thing holding humanity back from true evolution, his resolve will crumble. They began to walk, two figures from different eras, united by a single, terrifying purpose. Izanagi raised a hand, and the air in front of them shimmered. It didn't tear, it folded, space bending upon itself to create a doorway that led not to a different location, but to a different perspective, a place that existed beside the world, looking in. A place to plan. A place to watch. Tell me more about this boy, Naruto, Izanagi said as they stepped through. Tell me about everyone he loves. Their weaknesses. Their fears. We will not break the world with a single, grand stroke. We will unmake it, one thread at a time. In Konoha, Naruto woke with a start. He was in his apartment, the pale light of dawn just beginning to filter through the window. Kurama, a presence always at the edge of his consciousness, was alert, a low growl of unease rumbling in their shared mindscape. Did you feel that? Naruto asked, his heart hammering against his ribs. A ripple, Kurama replied, his voice grim. Old. Colder than Madara. Colder than me. It felt like the beginning of something. Naruto threw off the covers and walked to the window. The village was quiet, peaceful. He could see the first vendors opening their stalls, the early morning patrols making their rounds. Everything was as it should be. But the feeling wouldn't leave him. It was the feeling he'd had just before the Fourth War began, that sickening lurch in his gut that told him the ground was about to fall away. He thought of Shikamaru's words. Brooding. Maybe he was. But as he watched the sun rise over the Hokage monument, painting the faces of his predecessors in gold, he knew with a chilling certainty that the fragile peace was over. The waiting was done. Something had arrived. The first sign that something was fundamentally wrong came not from a border skirmish or an intelligence report, but from a single, confused genin team returning from a standard C-rank mission in the land of tea. Their client, a wealthy merchant, had been found dead in his inn room. There were no wounds, no signs of struggle, no evidence of poison. The man had simply stopped. The medical examiner in Konoha, a seasoned veteran of 2 wars, was baffled. The man's brain showed no physical trauma, but the neural pathways associated with memory were gone. Wiped clean. It was as if the man had been erased from the inside out. Sakura Haruno stood over the examination table, her green chakra-infused scalpels retracting into her fingertips. She looked up at Kakashi, who leaned against the wall, his single visible eye narrowed in thought. It's not a jutsu I've ever seen, she said, her voice low and professional. In the years since the war, she had become the foremost medical nin in the world, surpassing even Tsunade in her meticulous approach to the human body. There's no chakra residue, no cellular damage. It's like someone took an eraser to specific parts of his mind. Kakashi pushed off the wall and walked closer, looking down at the peaceful, blank face of the dead man. Selective memory removal. No physical intrusion. He tapped his temple. Sounds like a genjutsu. An impossibly subtle one. Genjutsu leaves traces, Sakura countered. The victim's chakra network shows signs of disruption, even hours later. This man's network is pristine. It's like the information was just unwritten. Kakashi's mind, sharp as ever, began to turn. He thought of Koto Amatsukami, Shursui's ultimate genjutsu that could manipulate a target without their knowledge. But even that left a mark, a subtle rearrangement of the victim's chakra. This was cleaner. This was absolute. Report this to Shikamaru directly, he ordered. And keep it quiet. I don't want this spreading panic. His next stop was the Hokage's office. He found Naruto not at his desk, but standing on the balcony, looking out over the village. The Hokage's Haori was draped over his chair. He wore a simple black and orange jacket, looking more like the Naruto of old. But his posture was different. It was coiled, ready. You feel it too, Naruto said, not turning around. Yes, Kakashi admitted, joining him. A merchant with his memories erased. A sensor outpost in the Land of Fire's northern range went silent last night. The three-man team is alive, but they can't remember their own names. And the Raikage sent an urgent, personal message. One of his best spies, a man deep undercover in the Land of Water, resurfaced. He has no memory of the last 10 years of his life. He thinks he's still a genin. Naruto finally turned. The shadows were back under his eyes. It's not an attack, Kakashi-sensei. Not yet. It's reconnaissance. Someone is gathering information. They're not killing our people, they're just opening their heads and reading the files. And then closing them back up, blank. That's a terrifying thought, Kakashi said quietly. A scout you can't detect, who can extract every secret from a mind without leaving a trace. Our entire intelligence network could be compromised and we'd never know. There's something else. Naruto's voice dropped. Kurama can't sense them. He can sense chakra from miles away, feel the intent of living things. But whoever or whatever is doing this, they're invisible to him. It's like they're not really here. A knock on the office door interrupted them. Shikamaru entered without waiting for a response, his face pale. He held a scroll in his hand. We have a problem, he said, his voice tight. It's Sasuke. Naruto was at his side in an instant. What happened? He was tracking the source of these memory losses, following a lead in the Land of Sound. Shikamaru unrolled the scroll. On it was a single, hastily written sentence in Sasuke's precise hand, found him. It's not Madara. It's older. Don't look for me. That's it? Kakashi asked. That's it. The messenger hawk was found an hour later, dead. No wounds. Just blank. Naruto's fists clenched. For the first time in years, the overwhelming power of the Nine Tails flickered at the edges of his control, a wave of heat and fury that made the air in the room shimmer. But just as quickly, it was gone. He breathed in, slow and deliberate. Panic was a luxury he could not afford. He's alive, Naruto said, his voice steady, though his eyes burned. If they wanted him dead, they would have killed him. They took him. They want something. Or someone, Kakashi added. Sasuke is the last living heir of the main Uchiha line, besides Madara. If this enemy is Uchiha, they'd want him, Shikamaru finished the thought. Not to kill. To recruit. To turn. The room fell silent. The implication was clear. Sasuke, alone, facing an enemy powerful enough to erase minds and evade all their senses. Sasuke, whose loyalty to the village, while proven, had been a hard-won battle. To lose him now, to have him turned against them, would be a blow from which the alliance might not recover. Naruto walked back to his desk and picked up the Hokage's Haori. He didn't put it on, just held it, feeling the weight of it. Shikamaru, I need a location. A direction. Anything. I've already got every sensor we have triangulating the last known position of the hawk. It's not much, but it's a start. It'll have to be enough. Naruto looked at Kakashi. I'm going. Alone? Kakashi asked, though he already knew the answer. Sasuke's my friend. My brother. If I take an army, they'll see it coming. They'll have time to prepare. This has to be fast. Quiet. He finally draped the Haori over his shoulders. And if it's a trap, I'd rather it be me walking into it than 100 others. Kakashi nodded. It was the right call. The Naruto of old might have rushed in blindly, fueled by emotion. This Naruto was moving with a cold, calculated purpose. The fox's cunning merged with the sage's wisdom. What about the village? Shikamaru asked. You're the strategist, Naruto said, a ghost of his old smile flickering across his face. You and Kakashi-sensei. Hold it together. Protect everyone. I'll bring him back. He didn't wait for a response. In a swirl of wind, he was gone, a streak of orange and white disappearing over the rooftops, heading west, toward the unknown. Shikamaru and Kakashi stood in the sudden silence. He's walking into the lion's den, Shikamaru muttered. No, Kakashi said, his visible eye creasing in what might have been pride. He's walking in to burn it down. The question is, what will be left standing when he's done? Deep in a cavern beneath the mountains, Sasuke Uchiha hung suspended in a web of invisible force. He could not move, could not speak, could not even close his eyes. Before him stood two figures. One he knew, Madara, watching him with an unreadable expression. The other, the tall one with the impossible eyes, regarded him like a fascinating specimen. The last Uchiha, Izanagi murmured, his voice a physical pressure on Sasuke's mind. So much hatred. So much pain. It's a beautiful architecture, isn't it, Madara? A foundation built for us to build upon. Madara said nothing. He simply watched, his arms crossed, his presence a silent, terrible weight in the room. Izanagi stepped closer, and Sasuke felt his thoughts begin to loosen, to drift. Memories of Itachi, of his parents, of Naruto, they started to feel distant, like photographs left too long in the sun, fading at the edges. You have been used by everyone, Sasuke Uchiha, Izanagi whispered, his fractal eyes spinning slowly. Your brother, your village, your enemies. They all took from you. They all shaped you into a weapon for their own purposes. Let me show you what you could have been. Let me show you the king you were meant to become. Sasuke tried to fight, tried to summon the curse mark's remnants, his Rinnegan, anything. But against this power, his strength was meaningless. It was not an attack, it was an unraveling. Piece by piece, the carefully constructed identity of Sasuke Uchiha began to come apart at the seams, ready to be rewoven into something new. Something terrible. The landscape blurred beneath Naruto as he moved, a streak of golden light against the green canvas of the land of fire. He had not felt this particular urgency since the war, since the moments before comrades fell. But this was different. This was Sasuke. You're pushing too hard, Kurama's voice rumbled in his mind. If you exhaust yourself before you find him, you'll be useless. I find him first. I rest later. Stubborn as always. But there was no heat in the words. The fox understood. Of all the bonds Naruto had forged, the one with Sasuke was the most hard one, the most deeply scarred, and the most fiercely protected. To lose him now, after everything, was unthinkable. Naruto touched down on a ridge overlooking the vast forest that bordered the ruined land of sound. According to Shikamaru's last transmission, this was the epicenter. The place where Sasuke's signal had vanished. The place where the hawk had fallen. He closed his eyes and extended his senses, not as a shinobi, but as a sage. He felt the flow of natural energy, the breath of the trees, the quiet heartbeat of the earth. And beneath it all, that same tremor he'd felt in Konoha. Stronger now. Closer. There, Kurama said. West. Deep underground. Something's blocking my full perception, but I can feel the pressure of powerful chakra. Multiple sources. Naruto opened his eyes. His gaze was steady, his breathing controlled. Madara's there. I can feel him. And something else. Something that feels like a void. He moved again, this time more cautiously, weaving through the trees like a phantom. The forest grew denser, older, the canopy blocking out the sun until he moved in perpetual twilight. Strange birds called out in rhythms that felt wrong, off. The animals here were skittish, hiding. Then he found it. A clearing, perfectly circular, where the grass was not dead but simply absent. In the center stood a single figure. Madara Uchiha. He stood with his arms crossed, his long hair stirring in a breeze that didn't seem to reach the trees. His eyes, those deep purple Rinnegan, fixed on Naruto with an unnerving calm. There was no hostility in his posture, no immediate threat. He was simply waiting. Naruto Uzumaki, Madara said, his voice carrying across the clearing without effort. I wondered how long it would take you. You've grown. Not just in power, but in patience. The old you would have charged in hours ago. Naruto stepped into the clearing, his own posture relaxed but ready. He stopped 20 meters from Madara, a respectful distance for warriors. Where is Sasuke? Safe. For now. Madara uncrossed his arms, letting them hang at his sides. He's being educated. About our clan. About its true history. The things Hashirama's peace erased. I don't care about your history lessons. I care about my friend. Madara's lips curved into something that was almost a smile. Your friend. Yes. You've always been consistent about that. It's almost admirable. Almost. He began to walk a slow circle around the clearing, and Naruto turned to keep him in sight. But tell me, Naruto. Is he your friend? Or is he your project? The boy you saved, again and again, because you couldn't let go? The words were designed to cut. Naruto felt their edge, but they glanced off a armor forged over years of doubt and self-reflection. He's my brother. And I don't need to justify that to you. No, Madara agreed. You don't. But he might need to justify it to himself. That's the interesting part. He stopped his circle, facing Naruto directly. The Uchiha King Izanagi, he doesn't need to brainwash Sasuke. He doesn't need to trap him in a genjutsu or rewrite his memories. He simply needs to show him the truth. And the truth, Naruto, is that the Uchiha have been enslaved by the Senju vision of the world since before the villages existed. We were the guardians, the ones who bore the curse of powerful emotion, and we were punished for it. Feared for it. Hunted for it. Naruto felt the truth in those words, twisted as they were. He had seen what the village's fear had done to the Uchiha. He had seen what it had done to Sasuke. But he also knew that fear was not the only force in the world. You're not wrong about the past, Naruto said quietly. The village made mistakes. Terrible ones. But Sasuke moved past that. He found a different path. Did he? Madara's eyes glinted. Or did he simply bury his hatred deep enough to function? That's the problem with your piece, Naruto. It doesn't heal wounds. It just covers them with bandages and calls it a day. Izanagi doesn't offer bandages. He offers surgery. He cuts out the rot. And what rot is that? Emotions? Love? Friendship? Naruto's voice hardened. Because that's what it sounds like. You want a world without pain, so you want a world without feeling. That's not peace. That's just being dead. Madara was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer, almost contemplative. You really believe that? You believe in the power of connection so completely that you can't see its cost. Every person you love is a hostage. Every friend is a weakness. Izanagi learned this millennia ago, watching his own brothers turn on each other, watching clans form and fracture and burn. He built the Sharingan not as a weapon, but as a tool to understand the heart. And what he learned was that the heart is chaos. It cannot be trusted. It must be guided. Guided, Naruto repeated. You mean controlled. I mean ordered. Madara met his gaze. You think the infinite Tsukuyomi was a dream of tyranny? It was a dream of peace. A flawed dream, I now see. But Izanagi's vision is different. He doesn't want to trap the world in illusion. He wants to reshape it. To create a structure so solid that chaos cannot re-enter. The Uchiha will be the architects. The guardians. Not rulers in the way you fear, but shepherds. Naruto shook his head slowly. You really believe that? After everything, after seeing what absolute power does to people, you still believe that control equals peace? I believe that your way has been tried for 100 years, and it has produced nothing but endless war. Madara's voice gained an edge. Hashirama's dream is dead, Naruto. It died the moment he was forced to kill me to protect it. It died in every child who was sent to die in wars they didn't understand. It died in every Uchiha who was herded into a compound and watched like criminals. Your way doesn't work. Then we make it work. Naruto's voice was steel. We keep trying. We keep failing. We keep getting back up. That's what it means to be human. That's what you and your king can't understand. The struggle is the point. The effort is what makes peace worth having. For the first time, something flickered in Madara's eyes. Respect? Regret? It was gone before Naruto could read it. You sound like him, Madara said quietly. Hashirama. You have his faith. His stubborn, beautiful, foolish faith. He straightened, and the air around him began to vibrate with suppressed power. I hoped you might see reason. I hoped the conversation might be enough. But I see now that you are as blind as he was. You will only learn through defeat. Naruto settled into a stance, years of instinct taking over. I've been defeated before. I'm still here. Yes, Madara agreed. But this time, the lesson isn't for you. Before Naruto could process the words, the ground beneath him dissolved. He fell through darkness, through silence, through a space that had no up or down. He tried to summon chakra, to fly, to slow his descent, but his power responded sluggishly, as if moving through molasses. The darkness pressed against him, not cold, not warm, just absent. A void where the world should be. Then, with a jolt that knocked the breath from his lungs, he landed. Not on stone or earth, but on something that felt like packed memory, like the surface of a dream. He was in a cavern, vast beyond measure, lit by an eerie phosphorescence that came from no visible source. Stalactites hung like frozen tears from a ceiling so high it vanished into shadow. And standing before him, only a few meters away, was Sasuke. But something was wrong. Sasuke's eyes were open, his Sharingan spinning slowly, but his face was slack, empty. He stood at attention like a soldier awaiting orders. And behind him, seated on a throne of carved obsidian, was the Uchiha king. Izanagi looked exactly as Naruto had sensed him, a void in the shape of a man. His fractal eyes regarded Naruto with clinical interest, as if he were a specimen that had finally arrived for examination. Naruto Uzumaki, Izanagi said, his voice resonating in ways that made Naruto's teeth ache. The child of prophecy. The bridge between clans. You've come a long way to die. I've come to take my friend home. Naruto's eyes flicked to Sasuke. Sasuke. Can you hear me? Sasuke didn't respond. Didn't blink. He hears you, Izanagi said, rising from his throne with a fluid grace that seemed to bend the light around him. He simply chooses not to answer. Or rather, he is considering whether the answer you want is the answer he should give. What have you done to him? I've done nothing. I've simply shown him the truth. Izanagi descended the steps of his throne, each footfall silent on the stone. The Uchiha were not always the clan you know. We were kings, once. We built empires while the Senju were still living in caves. We understood that emotion, unchecked, leads to destruction. So we learned to channel it. To weaponize it. To control it. He stopped a few feet from Sasuke, placing a hand on his shoulder. Sasuke didn't react. Your friend has spent his entire life being controlled by his emotions. His hatred for his brother. His love for his brother. His need for revenge. His need for redemption. He has never once chosen freely. He has only ever reacted. Naruto's hands clenched at his sides, but he forced himself to stay still. Charging in would accomplish nothing. He needed to understand. And you're giving him a choice? I'm giving him clarity. Izanagi's fractal eyes fixed on Naruto, and Naruto felt the edges of his own memories begin to fray. He pushed back with Kurama's chakra, reinforcing his mind. Izanagi's expression flickered with what might have been approval. Strong. The fox helps you. But even the fox cannot protect you from everything. I don't need protection. I need answers. Why now? Why come back after all this time? Izanagi considered the question as if it were genuinely interesting. Because the world has finally reached the perfect state of chaos. The old powers are broken. The villages are exhausted. The people are desperate for stability. And you, he pointed a long finger at Naruto, you stand as a symbol of everything that has failed. You preach connection, but your connections are the very thing that will undo you. You believe in peace, but you have no plan to maintain it beyond hope. You are a child playing at leadership, and the world is tired of children. The words were calm, measured, and utterly dismissive. Naruto had faced enemies who screamed their hatred, who monologued their grand plans, who revealed their weaknesses in their passion. Izanagi did none of these things. He simply stated his case as if it were already fact. You're wrong, Naruto said. About me. About Sasuke. About the world. Am I? Izanagi gestured, and the cavern around them shimmered. Suddenly they were standing in the ruins of Konoha, buildings shattered, bodies everywhere. Naruto recognized faces, Hinata, her eyes closed forever. Shikamaru, broken against a wall. Kakashi, his single eye staring at nothing. This is one possible future. The one where your way continues. Endless cycles of revenge, each generation killing the next, until nothing is left. The image shifted. Now they stood in a different Konoha, intact but sterile. The streets were empty. The faces in the windows were calm, blank, peaceful. No laughter. No tears. Just order. This is my future, Izanagi said. Pain removed. Conflict erased. Peace enforced. Naruto stared at the two visions. The chaos of his own path. The silence of Izanagi's. And he understood, with a clarity that surprised him, that both were wrong. These aren't futures, he said quietly. They're fears. Yours and mine. You're so afraid of chaos that you'd kill everything human to stop it. And I'm so afraid of losing the people I love that I'd fight forever to protect them, even if the fighting never ends. He turned to face Izanagi directly. But that's not all we are. That's not all the world is. There's a middle path. There has to be. And I'll find it. Izanagi's eyes narrowed, the fractal patterns spinning faster. For the first time, something like genuine interest flickered in their depths. You refuse to choose. That is the weakness of your generation. You think you can have everything. No. Naruto's voice was firm. I know I can't have everything. I know people die. I know peace is hard. I know I'll fail, and fail again. But I also know that giving up, choosing your frozen world or my endless war, is the only real failure. So I'll keep failing. I'll keep getting up. And I'll keep fighting for the people I love. Including him. He looked at Sasuke, whose eyes finally flickered. Just slightly. Just enough. Sasuke, Naruto said, his voice softer now. I'm not here to save you. You don't need saving. You never did. I'm here because you're my friend, and friends don't let friends make decisions alone. Whatever he showed you, whatever truth he gave you, it's yours. I'm not going to argue with it. But I am going to stand here, and when you're done thinking, when you're done choosing, I'll be here. Like I always have been. Like I always will be. The silence that followed was absolute. Naruto could feel Izanagi's attention, a physical weight, pressing against him. He could feel Madara's presence somewhere above, waiting. But most of all, he could feel Sasuke, the familiar chakra, the familiar soul, flickering behind those empty eyes. Then, slowly, Sasuke blinked. His Sharingan spun once, twice, and then settled into its normal pattern. His face, which had been slack, tightened with the effort of thought. He looked at Naruto, and for a moment, there was something like confusion in his gaze. Naruto, he said. His voice was hoarse, as if he hadn't spoken in days. You shouldn't have come. I know, Naruto said, and smiled. It was a tired smile, but a real one. But here I am. Sasuke's eyes moved to Izanagi, and something complicated passed across his face. Respect? Fear? Recognition? It was impossible to read. You showed me the truth, Sasuke said to the ancient Uchiha. But you didn't show me all of it. You showed me the pain the Senju caused. You showed me the fear that created the compound. You showed me the cycle of hatred from the Uchiha side. He paused, and his voice hardened. But you didn't show me what Itachi did to stop it. You didn't show me the Uchiha who planned the coup, who were willing to kill children to achieve their goals. You didn't show me our own sins. Izanagi's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the cavern seemed to drop. Every clan has its excesses. The point is the structure, not the individuals. No. Sasuke shook his head. The individuals are all that matter. Itachi taught me that. Naruto taught me that. You want to build a world where individuals don't matter, where they're just pieces in a structure. That's not peace. That's prison. For a long, terrible moment, no one moved. Naruto held his breath, ready for anything. Izanagi's fractal eyes burned with an intensity that made the air crackle. Then, unexpectedly, the ancient Uchiha laughed. It was not a warm sound. It was the laugh of a scholar who has just discovered a flaw in a beloved theory. It was the laugh of a king who has been challenged by a peasant and finds the challenge interesting. Extraordinary, Izanagi murmured. Two children, standing before the architect of their clan, telling him he's wrong. Telling him they've found a better way. He looked at Madara, who had appeared silently at the edge of the cavern. You were right about them. They are unique. Madara's expression was unreadable. I told you they would not break. No, Izanagi agreed. They won't break. They'll have to be unmade. He turned back to Naruto and Sasuke. But not today. Today, I've learned something valuable. Today, I've seen the opposition clearly. And I've confirmed that my approach requires refinement. He raised a hand, and the cavern began to tremble. Go, Izanagi said. Take your friend. Return to your village. Tell them what you've seen. Let them prepare. His fractal eyes gleamed. I want them to prepare. I want them to hope. Because when I return, it will not be to convince. It will be to build. And those who stand in the way of construction become part of the foundation. The ground split between them, a chasm opening that pulsed with dark energy. Naruto grabbed Sasuke's arm and pulled him back, but Izanagi made no move to stop them. He simply watched, his terrible eyes tracking their movement. Tell me your name, Naruto said, as the chasm widened. If we're going to fight, I want to know who I'm fighting. Izanagi inclined his head, a gesture of respect from one warrior to another. I have had many names. The Uchiha King. The First Eye. The Architect. But the one I was born with, the one that matters, is Izanagi. Remember it, boy. You'll be saying it in your prayers before the end. The chasm erupted, a pillar of dark energy shooting toward the surface. Naruto wrapped himself and Sasuke in golden chakra and fled upward, following the light, following the exit. Behind them, he felt the cavern collapse, felt Izanagi's presence recede into depths he couldn't reach. They burst through the surface in the center of the clearing, landing hard on the grass. Madara was gone. The clearing was empty. Only the birdsong and the wind remained. Sasuke stumbled, catching himself on a tree. He was pale, drawn, his eyes haunted. But he was himself. Naruto could feel it. He was in my head for days, Sasuke said quietly. Showing me things. Uchiha history I never knew. Battles I never learned about. Kings I never knew existed. He looked at Naruto. Some of it was true. Some of it I'm still not sure about. But he was convincing. Naruto nodded. I know. I felt it. He almost had me doubting myself. Almost? Naruto shrugged, a ghost of his old mannerism. I've had a lot of practice not doubting myself. You taught me that, actually. Back in the valley. You were so sure of your path, so certain. It made me realize that certainty isn't the same as truth. You can be certain and still be wrong. Sasuke was silent for a long moment. Then, quietly, he said, I almost stayed. But you didn't. No. I didn't. Sasuke pushed off from the tree, steadying himself. Because you showed up. Because you said you'd be there no matter what I chose. And I realized, that's the thing he can't account for. That's the variable his calculations miss. Unconditional connection. It's illogical. It's inefficient. But it's real. Naruto grinned, and for a moment, he was the old Naruto, the boy who never gave up. Told you. Believe it. Sasuke's lip twitched, almost a smile. Don't start. They stood together in the clearing, two warriors who had fought on opposite sides of every battle, who had tried to kill each other and died for each other, who had somehow, against all odds, found their way back to something like brotherhood. The road ahead was dark. The enemy was ancient and patient and terrifyingly logical. But for this moment, in this clearing, they had won. The war, however, was just beginning. The journey back to Konoha was silent and swift. Naruto carried Sasuke for part of it, the Uchiha too drained to maintain the pace his pride demanded. Neither spoke of it. Some courtesies between brothers needed no acknowledgement. They arrived at the village gates as dusk painted the sky in shades of bruised purple and orange. The guard on duty, a Chunin named Haruki who had fought in the war, saw them coming and simply nodded, waving them through without the customary check-in. Word traveled fast in a village built on information. Everyone knew the Hokage had left. Everyone knew he'd gone for Sasuke. Their return together was message enough. Shikamaru met them at the base of the Hokage tower, his expression carefully neutral. But Naruto had known him long enough to read the relief in the slight loosening of his shoulders, the way his cigarette remained unlit in his fingers. You look terrible, Shikamaru said to Sasuke. Feel worse, Sasuke replied, his voice flat. Need to report. Now. Shikamaru glanced at Naruto, who nodded. Get Sakura. And Kakashi. Round table in the strategy room. The strategy room was underground, beneath the Hokage tower, a relic of the war era that had been maintained out of habit. Its walls were lined with seals that blocked chakra sensing and eavesdropping. Its center held a large circular table, its surface inscribed with a map of the elemental nations that could be rearranged with a touch of chakra. Around this table sat 5 people, Naruto, Sasuke, Shikamaru, Kakashi, and Sakura. Gaara was en route, Shikamaru had reported, but would not arrive until morning. The other Kage had been notified of a significant threat without details. Panic was a weapon, and they would not hand it to the enemy prematurely. Sakura worked on Sasuke as he spoke, her chakra-infused hands hovering over his temples, his chest, his chakra network. She said nothing, but her frown deepened with each passing moment. He called himself Izanagi, Sasuke began. The first eye. The architect. He claims to be the original Uchiha king, the one who first unlocked the Sharingan's potential millennia ago. Kakashi's visible eye narrowed. Millennia? That would make him older than the Sage of Six Paths. Older than the Sage's era, Sasuke corrected. He existed before chakra was systematized, before the clans formalized their bloodlines. He claims the Uchiha were already old when Hagoromo and Hamura were born. That's impossible, Shikamaru said flatly. Human lifespans don't. He's not entirely human anymore. Sasuke's voice carried the weight of first-hand knowledge. His eyes, they're not Mangekyo. They're not Rinnegan. They're something else. He called them the eyes of origin. They allow him to perceive and manipulate the fundamental building blocks of reality. Memory. Perception. Space itself. Naruto nodded grimly. I felt it. When he looked at me, my own memories started to fray. Like he could just reach in and pull them apart. He can, Sasuke confirmed. He showed me things. Uchiha history that wasn't in any scroll, that no one alive could know. He pulled them directly from the genetic memory of the Sharingan itself. Our eyes don't just see chakra, they record everything their wielders see, generation after generation. He can access that. He showed me our ancestors, going back thousands of years. The room fell silent. The implications were staggering. An enemy who could not only read minds but read the accumulated memories of an entire bloodline. Who could manipulate space so fundamentally that he'd appeared from nowhere and vanished the same way? Who had patience measured in millennia? Sakura withdrew her hands from Sasuke's head, her face pale. His chakra network is different. It's not damaged, but it's been accessed. There are pathways that weren't there before, connections that shouldn't exist. Whatever Izanagi did, it wasn't just showing him memories. He rewired parts of his brain. Sasuke stiffened. Rewired? Nothing malignant, Sakura clarified quickly. Nothing controlling. It's more like, he opened doors that were always there but locked. You might find yourself remembering things you shouldn't know. Having instincts you can't explain. It's not dangerous physically, but psychologically. She trailed off. I'm fine, Sasuke said, but his voice lacked conviction. Naruto reached across the table and gripped his forearm. You're not fine. None of us are. But you're here. That's what matters. Sasuke met his eyes, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them. Then he nodded, pulling his arm back gently. There's more, Sasuke continued. Madara is with him. Not as a subordinate, as an ally. An equal, almost. Izanagi called him a flawed idealist, but also essential. They have different visions, but they're united in their goal, rebuilding the shinobi world under Uchiha rule. Different how? Shikamaru asked, reaching for a scroll to take notes. Madara still believes in the infinite Tsukuyomi, or something like it. A world of controlled dreams. But Izanagi thinks that's cowardice. He doesn't want to trap people in illusion, he wants to reshape reality itself. He wants to create a physical world where chaos literally cannot exist. Where every action, every thought, every possibility is ordered according to his design. Kakashi leaned back in his chair, processing. A world without free will. A world without the capacity for free will, Sasuke corrected. There's a difference. In the Tsukuyomi, people are dreaming but could theoretically wake up. In Izanagi's world, the idea of waking up wouldn't even make sense. There would be no self to wake. Just order. Perpetual, unchanging order. That's worse than death, Sakura whispered. To him, it's salvation. Sasuke's voice was bitter. He genuinely believes that suffering is caused by choice. Remove choice, remove suffering. It's logical, in a horrifying way. Naruto had been quiet, listening, absorbing. Now he spoke. He showed me two futures. One where my way leads to endless war until everyone's dead. One where his way leads to perfect peace, but everyone's empty. He wanted me to choose. To admit that my path is just as broken as his. Shikamaru looked up sharply. Did you? No. Naruto's voice was firm. Because they're both lies. Or at least, they're both incomplete. He's so focused on the big picture, the structure, the system, the future, that he forgets about now. About today. About the fact that people are suffering and laughing and living right now, and that matters more than any perfect tomorrow. That's not a strategy, Shikamaru said, but there was no criticism in his voice. That's a philosophy. We need both. Then we build both. Naruto stood, moving to the map table. His finger traced the borders of the land of fire, then moved outward. He's old. He's patient. He's going to take his time, pick us apart piece by piece. The memory erasures were just reconnaissance. He was mapping us, our strengths, our weaknesses, our connections. Next, he'll start cutting. Cutting how? Kakashi asked. By going after what holds us together. Naruto's eyes moved to Sasuke. He tried with you. When that didn't work, he let us go. Not out of mercy, because he learned something. He learned that our bond is stronger than his manipulation. So now he knows he can't just turn us against each other. He'll have to find another way. The villages, Shikamaru said, catching on. The alliance is only a few years old. It's held together by treaties and trust in mutual fear of another war. If he can create distrust between the Kage, if he can make us suspect each other of secret deals or hidden agendas, the alliance fractures. Then he picks off the pieces. Naruto nodded. That's what I do. And he's had thousands of years to learn how to do it. The room absorbed this in silence. The enemy was not just powerful, he was strategic. He thought in terms of systems, not battles. He would not charge at their walls with an army. He would seep through the cracks, widen them, and watch the structure collapse under its own weight. We need to warn the other Kage, Sakura said. In person. Secure communication only. Gaara's coming, Shikamaru reminded her. He can carry messages to the others. They trust him. Trust. Naruto repeated the word like he was weighing it. That's what he's going to attack. Trust between villages. Trust between comrades. Trust between friends. We need to make it stronger. We need to show him that trust isn't a weakness, it's a weapon. How? Sasuke asked. It was not a challenge. It was a genuine question from someone who had spent most of his life believing the opposite. Naruto turned to him. By being worth trusting. By showing up. By keeping our promises. By proving, every single day, that connection isn't just a nice idea, it's the only thing that actually works. That's not a military strategy, Shikamaru said again, but this time he was almost smiling. No, Naruto agreed. It's not. But it's the foundation that any military strategy has to stand on. You're the strategist, Shika. You'll figure out the tactics. My job is to make sure the people we're fighting for are still people worth fighting for when this is over. The War Council continued through the night. Shikamaru unrolled maps and drew diagrams, sketching possible scenarios and counter-strategies. Kakashi contributed insights from his years in ANBU, the ways that covert operations could be used to disrupt an enemy who operated in shadows. Sakura detailed the medical implications of memory manipulation and began developing countermeasures, seals that could protect against mental intrusion, protocols for identifying victims of memory theft. Sasuke sat apart, watching, contributing when asked. But his mind was elsewhere. The doors Izanagi had opened in his brain kept swinging open at odd moments, revealing flashes of things he'd never seen. A battle on a plane of glass, thousands of Uchiha fighting an enemy that looked like shadows given form. A woman with Sharingan eyes weeping over a child's body. A king on a throne of bones, his fractal eyes staring into a future that hadn't yet happened. He left these here on purpose, Sasuke realized. Not to control me. To distract me. To make me doubt which memories are mine and which are his. It was a clever trap. How could he trust his own instincts when he didn't know where they came from? How could he fight beside his comrades when part of him kept seeing them through the eyes of an ancient king who viewed them as obstacles to be removed? He looked at Naruto, who was deep in discussion with Shikamaru, pointing at something on the map. Naruto, who had walked into the enemy's lair without hesitation. Naruto, who had stood in front of an ancient god and said, "I'm here because you're my friend." That was real. That memory, at least, Sasuke was certain of. He had felt it, the warmth of Naruto's chakra, the absolute certainty in his voice. No manipulation could create that. No ancient king could fake it. Focus, he told himself. The past is the past, even if it's someone else's past. What matters is now. He pushed himself up and walked to the table, inserting himself into the conversation. He can fold space. We saw that. He appeared from nowhere, and the cavern we were in wasn't connected to any known underground network. He's not just teleporting, he's creating spaces that exist outside normal geography. Pocket dimensions. Shikamaru's eyes lit with the thrill of a puzzle. So his base of operations could be anywhere. Or nowhere. We can't assault him directly. Not yet, Sasuke agreed. But he has to interact with our world to affect it. Every memory he takes, every agent he deploys, creates a connection. A thread we can follow. Back to him? Kakashi asked. Back to something. Maybe not him directly, but to his operations. His supply lines. His people. Sasuke met Kakashi's gaze. He may be ancient, but he's not alone. He has Madara. He'll need others, soldiers, spies, true believers. Those people have weaknesses. They can be turned, captured, or killed. Kakashi nodded slowly. We need to build an intelligence network specifically targeting his network. Double agents. Deep cover. It'll take time. Time we have, Naruto said. He's patient, remember? He's not going to rush. That means we have time to prepare. To train. To build something he can't just fold space through. What can't he fold space through? Sakura asked. Naruto thought about it. Me. You. People. When he looked at me, he couldn't just erase me. He had to talk to me, try to convince me. That means his powers have limits. They work on memories, on space, but not on will. Not on conviction. On things without chakra, Shikamaru refined. Or things with too much chakra to easily manipulate. He can affect empty space because it's passive. He can affect individual memories because they're isolated. But a living person, actively resisting, actively channeling power, that's harder. Sasuke nodded. That matches what I felt. When he was in my head, it was easiest when I was passive. When I fought back, it took more effort. When Naruto showed up and I focused on him, the connection weakened. So we stay together, Sakura said. We don't give him isolated targets. We stay connected, Naruto corrected. Distance doesn't matter if the bond is strong. He could be in the next room or on the moon. If we're truly connected, he can't break that. That's what I learned from the war. That's what I learned from my parents. Love doesn't care about space. It sounded like a speech. It sounded like something the old Naruto would have shouted to the heavens. But spoken quietly, in the dim light of the strategy room, it sounded like truth. Dawn found them exhausted but resolved. Gaara arrived as the sun cleared the horizon, his sand carrier settling gently in the training grounds. He walked into the strategy room without preamble, his presence immediately calming. The Kazekage had that effect, a stillness that centered those around him. Naruto briefed him in 10 minutes flat. Gaara listened without interruption, his pale eyes occasionally flicking to Sasuke, measuring, assessing. When do we tell the other Kage? Gaara asked. Now, Naruto said. But carefully. Not all at once. Not in a way that can be intercepted. He looked at Shikamaru. We need a summit. Small. Secure. Somewhere neutral. The Land of Iron, Shikamaru suggested. Mifune's territory. He's old school, doesn't use shinobi for communication. His samurai rely on messengers and face-to-face meetings. Harder for spacefolding to intercept. Naruto nodded. Make it happen. 2 weeks. In the meantime, we start preparing here. Sakura, I want every medical nin trained in memory protection seals. Kakashi, reactivate your old ANBI networks, quietly. Sasuke. He paused, looking at his friend. Sasuke, I need you to rest. Really rest. And then I need you to explore those new memories. Figure out what Izanagi gave you. It might be a trap, but it might also be intelligence we can use. Sasuke inclined his head. No arguments. No pride. Just acknowledgement. And you? Gaara asked Naruto. What will you do? Naruto looked out the small window at the village waking below. Civilians opening shops. Children running to the academy. Teams gathering at the mission desk. Normal life, oblivious to the ancient threat gathering in the shadows. I'm going to remind people why we're fighting, he said quietly. I'm going to walk through the village and talk to everyone. Listen to their fears. Answer their questions. Be present. He turned back to the group. Izanagi wants to make us afraid of each other, suspicious of connection. The best counter to that is connection itself. Visible, undeniable connection. It's risky, Kakashi said. You'll be exposed. An easy target. Maybe. Naruto shrugged. But if he attacks me in the middle of the village, in front of everyone, he shows his hand. He becomes the monster, and I become the martyr. Either way, we win. The room absorbed this. It was reckless. It was also, in its way, brilliant. Izanagi operated in shadows, in whispers, in the spaces between people. Forcing him into the light was the one strategy his millennia of patience might not account for. One condition, Gaara said. I stay with you. My sand can react faster than any shinobi. If he attacks, I buy you a second. Naruto smiled, genuinely this time. Deal. The village responded to Naruto's presence like flowers to sun. He spent the morning at the academy, sitting in on classes, helping young genin with their shuriken forms, answering questions about the war with an honesty that surprised even the teachers. Yes, people had died. Yes, he still missed them. Yes, it was worth it. He spent the afternoon in the market, buying ramen from Tuchi's daughter Ayam, chatting with vendors about their crops and their children and their fears about the future. He didn't dismiss those fears. He acknowledged them. He shared some of his own. He promised nothing except that he would keep showing up, keep fighting, keep believing in them. By evening, word had spread. The Hokage was walking among them. The Hokage was listening. The Hokage was there. Sasuke watched from a rooftop, hidden in the shadows. He had intended to rest, but found himself drawn to follow Naruto's progress through the village. It was like watching a force of nature, not destructive, but generative. Where Naruto passed, people straightened. Their eyes brightened. Their voices grew stronger. He really believes it, Sasuke thought. Every word. Every gesture. It's not an act. And in that belief, Sasuke saw the answer to the question Izanagi had planted in his mind. What is real? This was real. This connection, this trust, this impossible, irrational faith in other people. It couldn't be measured or mapped or manipulated. It simply was. He turned away from the rooftop and headed for his apartment. Rest, Naruto had said. Then work. Explore the memories. Find the weaknesses. For the first time since the cavern, Sasuke felt something like hope. Deep in his pocket dimension, Izanagi watched through eyes that were not eyes, sensors that were not physical. He saw Naruto walking through the village. He saw the people responding. He saw the bonds strengthening, weaving themselves into something resilient. The boy is clever, he murmured to Madara, who stood beside him. He understands what I'm doing. He's building countermeasures in plain sight. Madara said nothing, his own eyes fixed on the image of the village. It won't matter, Izanagi continued. Bonds can be broken. Trust can be betrayed. It just takes the right leverage. He turned his fractal gaze to Madara. You know them better than I do. Who is the weakest link? Who will break first when pressure is applied? Madara was silent for a long moment. Then, quietly, he said, none of them. That's the problem. They've all broken before, and they've all put themselves back together. They're stronger at the cracks. Izanagi considered this. Then we don't break them. We isolate them. We remove the supports one by one until the structure stands alone. Then we see how strong it really is. He waved a hand, and the image shifted. Now they were looking at a different village, a different leader. The Tsuchikage, young and ambitious, arguing with his advisors about border security. The Raikage, blunt and aggressive, already suspicious of Konoha's motives. The Mizukage, isolated by geography, dependent on sea routes that could be disrupted. Start with them, Izanagi ordered. Whisper in their ears. Show them visions of Konoha betraying them. Give them reasons to doubt. The alliance is young. It will crack before it bends. Madara nodded and vanished, leaving Izanagi alone with his observations. The ancient Uchiha king watched Naruto for a long time after Madara left. Watched him laugh with a child. Watched him comfort an elderly widow. Watched him sit alone on a bench as night fell, exhaustion visible in every line of his body. You really believe it, Izanagi murmured, echoing Sasuke's thought. You really believe love is enough? He almost admired it. Almost. Then he turned away, and the image faded, and the pocket dimension returned to its eternal, ordered silence. The game was afoot. The pieces were moving. And in the end, order always triumphed over chaos. It was simply a matter of patience. The summons to the Land of Iron arrived through channels so ancient they predated the shinobi village system. A samurai in ceremonial armor delivered a scroll to each Kage's office, bowed precisely once, and departed without waiting for reply. The message was simple: the 5 Kage are invited to a council of peace at the Samurai Hall in 10 days. Hosted by Mifune. All travel expenses borne by the Land of Iron. It was, Shikamaru noted, a masterstroke. By using samurai messengers rather than shinobi couriers, Mifune bypassed every intelligence network in the elemental nations. By inviting all 5 Kage simultaneously, he made refusal impossible. The first leader to decline would appear fearful or hostile. By hosting in his own territory, he guaranteed neutrality. Or so we're meant to believe, Shikamaru said, studying the scroll in Naruto's office. Mifune's old school. He genuinely believes in the old ways, the samurai code. But he's also practical. He wouldn't call a summit without a reason. The reason is Izanagi, Naruto said. He stood at the window, watching the village below. In the days since his walk through the market, he'd made a habit of being visible, attending team graduations, visiting the hospital, eating at public stalls. The village had responded with a quiet resurgence of morale. People still feared the unknown threat, but they feared it together. Mifune's intelligence network isn't as sophisticated as ours, Kakashi added, leaning against the wall. But it's old. It has roots in places shinobi don't go. He's heard something. Or someone told him something. Sasuke sat in the corner, his eyes closed, but everyone in the room knew he was listening. Since returning from the cavern, he'd been quieter than usual, more withdrawn. But when he spoke, his words carried weight. Izanagi wants us all in one place. A summit is the perfect target. Shikamaru nodded grimly. That's the risk. 5 Kage, plus advisors, plus security. If he attacks there, he could decimate the leadership of the entire shinobi world in one stroke. So we don't go? Sakura asked. She'd been summoned from the hospital, where she'd been training a cadre of medical nin in memory protection techniques. The dark circles under her eyes matched everyone else's. No, we go, Naruto said, turning from the window. If we don't, the alliance fractures anyway. The other Kage will wonder why we're hiding. They'll start listening to whatever whispers Izanagi sends their way. We go, but we go prepared. Prepared how? Gaara asked. He'd remained in Konoha after delivering his report, ostensibly for diplomatic discussions, actually because no one wanted to let him out of sight. His presence was a stabilizing force, and his sand was the fastest defensive measure they had. Naruto looked at Shikamaru. You're the strategist. How do we protect against an enemy who can fold space, erase memories, and manipulate perception? Shikamaru was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming on the table. Then, slowly, he began to speak. We assume he can observe us. Probably is observing us right now. So we don't plan in ways he can predict. We build redundancies. We create layers of protection that don't depend on any single person or technique. He stood and moved to the map table, touching the location of the Land of Iron. First, we don't all travel together. 5 separate routes, 5 separate times. If he attacks one, the others continue. Kakashi nodded. Standard dispersion protocol. Second, we don't rely on shinobi for primary security at the summit itself. Mifune samurai are the first line. They're not chakra sensitive, which means they're harder to detect and manipulate through conventional means. Izanagi's powers work on chakra, samurai have less of it. They're wild cards. He'll adapt, Sasuke said quietly. Of course he will. That's why we have third, a rapid response team hidden in the Land of Iron, not at the summit location. If he attacks, they move in from outside his range. They're our hammer. Who's on the team? Naruto asked. Shikamaru's eyes moved around the room. Me. Kakashi. A rotating squad of ANBU from each village, coordinated by secure communication. And Sasuke. Sasuke's eyes opened. Me? Your Rinnegan gives you the best chance of countering his space manipulation. You've been inside his head, you know how he thinks, at least a little. And you're the only one besides Naruto who's faced him and walked out. Sasuke considered this, then nodded once. No protest. No pride. Just acceptance. Fourth, Shikamaru continued, we need a dead man switch. Something that happens if the summit is compromised and all communication is lost. A pre-authorized response that doesn't require leadership to activate. That's... Sakura trailed off. That's planning for the worst, Shikamaru agreed. But if Izanagi takes out the Kage, the villages can't descend into chaos. There has to be a succession plan, a chain of command, a protocol for continuing the fight. Otherwise he wins without firing a shot. Naruto looked at him for a long moment. You've been thinking about this for days. Since you left to get Sasuke. Shikamaru met his gaze. It's what I do. I think about the worst possible outcomes so we can avoid them. Then we do it. All of it. Naruto's voice was firm. But there's a fifth layer. The most important one. He waited until he had everyone's attention. We trust each other. Not just the plan, not just the protocols, each other. When this goes wrong, because it will go wrong, the only thing that will save us is knowing that the person next to us has our back. Not because they're ordered to. Because they choose to. Sakura smiled slightly. Gaara's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Kakashi's visible eye crinkled. Sasuke looked away, but not before Naruto saw the flicker of something in his expression. Sentimental, Shikamaru said, but there was no criticism in his voice. But not wrong. I'll add it to the plan. The journey to the Land of Iron took 5 days for Naruto's group, traveling through the mountains that bordered the northern territories. They moved at night, rested during the day, and varied their route constantly. Gaara's sand floated around them in a perpetual cloud, ready to react to any threat. Naruto used the time to think. Not about tactics, Shikamaru had those covered. Not about power, he knew his limits and capacities better than anyone. He thought about Izanagi. About what the ancient Uchiha had said, what he'd shown, what he'd wanted. He wants me to doubt, Naruto realized. Not just my friends, but myself. He wants me to question whether my way is really better, or if I'm just fooling myself. It was a clever attack. The most dangerous kind. Because it came from inside, from the quiet spaces where even the strongest warriors harbored uncertainty. You're not wrong to question, Kurama's voice rumbled. Certainty without examination is just stubbornness. But you've examined. You've doubted. You've come back to the same conclusion every time. That's not naivety. That's conviction. Thanks, old friend. Don't thank me. I'm just the voice in your head. Literally. Naruto almost laughed. Almost. The samurai hall sat on a plateau overlooking the frozen sea, its black wood and white stone a stark contrast to the snow-covered mountains behind it. It had stood for centuries, surviving wars and natural disasters and the rise and fall of empires. Its walls had heard the vows of countless samurai, its floors had been polished by generations of feet, its air carried the weight of history. The 5 Kage arrived over the course of 2 days. The Mizukage came by ship, her escort a mix of mist-nin and samurai. The Tsuchikage traveled overland through the mountains, his small frame bundled against the cold. The Reikage arrived last, as always, his impatience with protocol barely contained. The Kazekage was already there, having traveled with Naruto's group. And the Hokage walked in last, alone, his Haori catching the wind as he crossed the courtyard. Mifune met them at the entrance to the Great Hall. He was older than any of them, his face lined with decades of service, but his eyes were sharp and his stance was that of a man who could still draw his blade faster than most could blink. "Hokage," he said, bowing slightly. "Your reputation precedes you." "Lord Mifune." Naruto returned the bow. "Thank you for hosting. I know the samurai prefer to stay out of shinobi affairs." "The samurai prefer peace," Mifune corrected. "When that peace is threatened, we have no choice but to involve ourselves." He gestured toward the hall. "The others are waiting. We'll begin at sundown." The great hall was lit by paper lanterns and a central fire pit, its smoke rising through an opening in the ceiling. The 5 Kage sat in a circle, their advisors behind them. Naruto had brought only Shikamaru, the others were positioned according to the plan. Mifune sat at the head of the circle, his role that of mediator rather than participant. For the first hour, they discussed border disputes. The Tsuchikage complained about Iwa's northern territories being threatened by Konoha-aligned merchants. The Reikage demanded explanation for Kumogakura's missing spies. The Mizukage spoke of piracy in the southern seas that seemed to target only Kiri ships. Normal politics. Frustrating, time-consuming, but normal. Then the Reikoke set down his cup with a thud that echoed off the walls. "Enough," he said, his voice carrying the weight of his impatience. "We're not here about borders or pirates. We're here because something is wrong. My best spies are coming back with holes in their heads. My sensors report chakra signatures that don't exist. My advisors whisper about Uchiha ghosts and ancient kings." He fixed Naruto with a glare. "You know something, Hokage. Tell us, or I'll assume you're behind it." The room tensed. Samurai guards shifted slightly. Shikamaru's hand moved toward a scroll. Naruto met the Reikage's gaze steadily. "You're right. I know something. I was going to wait until we'd established some trust, but since you asked directly." "I didn't ask. I demanded." "I'll tell you." Naruto's voice didn't change, but something in his presence shifted. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "There's an ancient Uchiha. He calls himself Izanagi. He predates the Sage of Six Paths. He has powers we don't fully understand: memory manipulation, space folding, perception control. He's allied with Madara Uchiha. And he intends to remake the shinobi world under his rule." Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Then the Tsuchikage laughed. It was a young man's laugh, nervous and disbelieving. "An ancient Uchiha? Older than the sage? That's impossible. The sage created chakra." "The sage systematized chakra," Sasuke's voice came from the shadows behind Naruto. He stepped forward, his Rinnegan visible, his Sharingan spinning. "He didn't create it. It existed before him, in forms we don't understand. Izanagi is one of those forms." The Mizukage leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "You've seen him?" "I was his prisoner for 3 days." Sasuke's voice was flat, factual. "He showed me things. Uchiha history that predates the clan. Battles that happened before the villages existed. A world where order is everything and choice is nothing. He's real. He's powerful. And he's patient." The Reikage's glare had shifted from anger to calculation. "If this is true, and I'm not saying I believe it, why tell us now? Why not build your own army, your own weapons, and face him alone?" "Because we can't," Naruto said simply. "Not alone. Maybe not together. But apart, we definitely lose. Together, we have a chance." "A chance," the Tsuchikage repeated. "That's all you're offering?" "That's all anyone can offer." Naruto stood, moving to the center of the circle. "I've faced gods before. Kagaya was a god. Madara was a god. I beat them because I had help from all of you, from people who believed in me, from people who were willing to die for something bigger than themselves. This enemy is different. He's not just powerful, he's smart. He thinks in centuries. He'll pick us apart slowly, turn us against each other, make us doubt everything we believe. The only defense is to believe harder. To trust deeper. To hold on to each other so tight that nothing can pry us apart." It sounded like a speech. It was a speech. But as Naruto spoke, something happened in the room. The suspicion didn't vanish, that would be impossible, but it shifted. The Kage looked at each other differently. They looked at Naruto differently. Mifune spoke for the first time since the revelation. "The samurai have heard whispers. Ancient things stirring in the mountains. Old powers waking. We dismissed them as superstition." He paused. "We were wrong to dismiss. We will not be wrong again. The Reikage grunted. Kumo will investigate. If we find evidence of this Izanagi, we'll share it. But I make no promises beyond that. The Tsuchikage nodded reluctantly. The Mizukage inclined her head. Gaara, of course, had already committed. It wasn't an alliance. Not yet. But it was a beginning. The attack came 3 hours later, in the deepest part of the night. Naruto was asleep in his assigned quarters when the world folded. One moment he was dreaming of ramen and his parents' faces, the next, he was standing in darkness, alone, the cold of the land of iron replaced by an absence of temperature that was somehow worse. You see? Izanagi's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. This is what your trust buys you. Isolation. Naruto didn't panic. He reached for Kurama's chakra, felt it respond instantly, warming him from within. You're wrong. I'm not isolated. I'm just in a different room. A room of my making. A space between spaces. Your friends can't reach you here. Your precious connections can't cross the void. Izanagi materialized before him, his fractal eyes spinning slowly. This is the truth of existence, Naruto Uzumaki. We are all alone. The bonds you cherish are illusions, comfort blankets against the dark. When the dark comes, really comes, they dissolve. Naruto studied the ancient Uchiha. In the void, away from distractions, he could see him more clearly. The age in his eyes wasn't just physical, it was existential. He had watched everyone he loved die, generation after generation. He had seen every bond shatter eventually. And he had drawn the only conclusion possible: bonds weren't worth building. I'm sorry, Naruto said quietly. Izanagi's eyes flickered. Sorry? That you believe that. That you've lived so long and learned so little. Naruto straightened, his chakra flaring. You're not showing me truth. You're showing me your fear. You're afraid of connection because it hurts when it ends. So you tell yourself it was never real. That's not wisdom. That's cowardice. For the first time, something like anger flickered in Izanagi's fractal gaze. You dare. I dare because I've been where you are. Naruto's voice was steady, compassionate, and absolutely unshakable. After Jiraiya died. After Neji died. After I thought Sasuke was gone forever. I wanted to believe that connection wasn't worth it. That it would be easier to be alone. But I was wrong. The pain of loss is the price of love, and it's worth paying. Every time. The void trembled. Izanagi's control, absolute moments ago, wavered. You're a child, he hissed. You understand nothing. I understand that you're lonely. Naruto met his gaze without flinching. You've been alone for thousands of years, watching everyone die, telling yourself it's better that way. But it's not. And somewhere, deep down, you know it. That's why you're here, talking to me, trying to convince me. Because if you can convince me, maybe you can convince yourself. The void shattered. Naruto opened his eyes in his quarters, gasping. Kurama's chakra flooded through him, checking for damage, finding none. The room was intact. The world was solid. And standing over him, their faces etched with relief and fear, were Sasuke and Gaara. You were gone, Sasuke said, his voice rough. For 3 seconds, your chakra signature just vanished. Then you were back. 3 seconds? Naruto sat up, his mind racing. It felt like hours. Space manipulation, Gaara said quietly. He pulled you into a pocket dimension. Time flows differently there. Naruto nodded, processing. Then he looked at Sasuke. The others? Unharmed. The attack was focused on you. Sasuke's jaw tightened. He's hunting the leader. Trying to decapitate the resistance before it forms. Then we need to move faster. Naruto stood, his body protesting but his will unbroken. Gather everyone. We're not waiting for dawn. We plan now, we act now, and we show him that isolation isn't our weakness, it's his. Sasuke almost smiled. You're impossible. I know. Naruto grinned, and for a moment, he was the old Naruto, the boy who never quit. Believe it. In the pocket dimension, Izanagi sat on his throne of obsidian, his fractal eyes fixed on nothing. The boy's words echoed in his mind, unwanted, unwelcome. You're lonely. It was true. It had always been true. He had buried that truth under millennia of logic, of order, of control. But the boy had dug it up with nothing but compassion and certainty. Madara appeared at the edge of the chamber. The attack failed. Yes. The other Kage are mobilizing. Not fully allied, but suspicious. Your window of isolation is closing. Yes. Madara studied him for a long moment. You're troubled. Izanagi's eyes snapped into focus, their fractal patterns spinning faster. I'm considering a new approach. The boy is stronger than anticipated. Not in power, in conviction. We need to break that conviction before it spreads. How? Izanagi was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. By giving him what he wants. By showing him what his precious connections cost. By forcing him to choose between the people he loves and the world he's trying to save. He stood, his presence filling the chamber. Prepare the next phase. It's time to introduce the boy to the true price of leadership. Madara nodded and vanished, leaving Izanagi alone with his thoughts and the echo of a truth he had spent millennia trying to forget. You're lonely. Yes, he whispered to the void. But soon, everyone will be. That's the point. The emergency council convened in the Samurai Hall's deepest chamber, a room originally designed for war councils during the Warring States period. Its walls were thick stone, its ceiling low, its atmosphere heavy with the weight of centuries of desperate decisions. Mifune had granted its use without hesitation, recognizing that the threat facing them transcended old boundaries between samurai and shinobi. The five Kage sat around a rough-hewn table, their advisors pressed against the walls. Naruto stood at the head, not through any formal protocol, but because when he spoke, people listened. It was a gift he'd never asked for and never fully understood, but in moments like this, he accepted it. He pulled me into a pocket dimension, Naruto said, his voice calm but carrying. Time moved differently there. He could have kept me for days, weeks, while seconds passed here. He chose not to. Why? The Raikage's question was blunt, suspicious. If he could isolate and eliminate you, why didn't he? Because he wanted something else. Naruto met the Raikage's gaze. He wanted to convince me. To make me see the world his way. When that failed, he let me go. Not out of mercy, out of strategy. He's gathering data. Testing responses. Learning how we think. But Sachikage, young and still finding his confidence, spoke up. That's terrifying. An enemy who doesn't just want to defeat us, but to understand us. To break us from the inside. Exactly. Shikamaru stepped forward from the wall, a scroll unrolled in his hands. We've been treating this like a conventional threat, find the enemy, engage, defeat. But Izanagi isn't playing that game. He's playing a longer game. A deeper game. He's attacking the foundations of how we operate. The Mizukage leaned forward, her eyes sharp. What foundations? Trust. Communication. The assumption that our allies are who they appear to be. Shikamaru's voice was grim. He can erase memories, rewrite perceptions, create spaces where normal rules don't apply. He doesn't need to defeat us in battle. He just needs to make us doubt each other enough that we do his work for him. Silence settled over the room. Every leader there understood the implication. The shinobi system was built on trust, trust in intelligence, trust in chains of command, trust in the bonds between comrades. Undermine that, and the system didn't just weaken. It collapsed. What do you propose? Mifune asked quietly. Naruto looked at Shikamaru, who nodded. We create layers of verification that don't depend on any single sense or source, Shikamaru began. Code words that change daily. Paired observations, no one trusts a report unless two unrelated sources confirm it. Dead drops that can only be accessed by specific individuals. We make ourselves harder to read, harder to mimic, harder to manipulate. That will slow everything down, the Raikage objected. In a crisis, we need speed. In a crisis, we need accuracy. Shikamaru met his objection without flinching. Speed without accuracy is just running toward the wrong target. Izanagi will create false crises to make us react. If we train ourselves to verify before acting, we rob him of that weapon. The Raikage grunted, unconvinced but not arguing. There's more, Sasuke said from the shadows. Everyone turned. He stepped forward, his Rinnegan catching the lantern light. I've been exploring the memories Izanagi left in my mind. They're not random. They're a map. A map to what? Gaara asked. To him. To his history. To his weaknesses. Sasuke's voice was careful, measured. He wanted me to have these memories. He wanted me to explore them, to learn from them, to think I was uncovering secrets. But in giving them to me, he also gave me something else, the shape of his mind. The way he thinks. The patterns he can't escape. Naruto looked at him sharply. You're sure? No. But I'm sure enough to act. Sasuke met his gaze. He's ancient, but he's not infinite. He has routines, habits, preferences. He always attacks from positions of perceived weakness. He always isolates before he strikes. He always leaves an exit because he values observation over elimination. These aren't just tactics, they're character. And character can be predicted. Shikamaru was already writing, his eyes bright with the thrill of a puzzle. Give me everything. Every pattern, every preference, every quirk. If we can build a behavioral model, we can start anticipating his moves. Sasuke nodded and began to speak, his voice low and precise. The room listened, absorbing, adapting. For the first time since this began, they weren't just reacting. They were planning. 3 days later, the first verification came due. A messenger from the Land of Lightning arrived at the Samurai Hall, bearing urgent news: Kumogakure had been attacked. Not by an army, but by a single figure who had walked through the walls, erased the memories of the guard, and stolen something from the Raikage's personal vault. The Raikage, still at the summit, received the news with controlled fury. What was taken? Naruto asked. The Raikage's jaw tightened. That's not your concern. It is if it helps us understand the enemy. For a long moment, the Raikage struggled with instinct and necessity. Then, slowly, he spoke. A scroll. Ancient. It contains techniques developed by the second Raikage, techniques for binding and controlling tailed beasts without Jinchuriki. We never used them, they were deemed too dangerous. But if Izanagi has them, he could use them against us, Shikamaru finished. Against Naruto. Against B. The Raikage's fists clenched. B can handle himself. But the techniques aren't just about control, they're about suppression. They could weaken a Jinchuriki's connection to their beast. Make them vulnerable. Naruto felt Kurama stir within him. That's a problem. If he can weaken our bond, even temporarily, you lose access to my power. More importantly, you lose access to me. We won't let that happen. You can't promise that. No. He couldn't. But he could promise to fight like hell to prevent it. We need to warn B, Naruto said. And we need to assume that every village has similar vulnerabilities. Ancient techniques, forgotten weapons, hidden knowledge. Izanagi has had millennia to learn where they're buried. He'll be gathering them all. The Mizukage paled. Kiri has things. Things we sealed away during the Bloody Mist era. If he uncovers them, then we uncover them first. Naruto's voice was firm. We share intelligence. We open our archives to each other. We stop treating our darkest secrets as assets and start treating them as liabilities. But Tsuchikage looked uncomfortable. Some secrets are secrets for a reason. If they get out, we deal with it together. Naruto met his gaze. Better that than letting Izanagi use them against us one by one. One by one, the Kage nodded. Reluctantly, warily, but genuinely. The alliance, fragile and new, took another step toward solidity. The next attack came not at a village, but at a person. Sakura had returned to Konoha 2 days earlier, tasked with accelerating the medical nin training program. She worked 18-hour days, slept in her office, ate at her desk. It was familiar, the war had trained her for this kind of sustained effort. What wasn't familiar was the dream. In it, she stood in a field of white flowers, the sky above her a perfect, cloudless blue. Before her stood a man she didn't recognize, tall and dark-haired, with eyes that seemed to contain infinite patterns. Sakura Haruno, he said. His voice was gentle, almost kind. The healer. The backbone. The one who holds them together when they fall apart. Who are you? She knew, somehow, but needed to hear it. Izanagi. You've heard of me. He smiled, and it was almost warm. I'm not here to harm you. I'm here to offer you something. I don't want anything from you. Everyone wants something. You want recognition. You've always wanted it, from Sasuke, from Naruto, from the village that sees you as the strong one, the reliable one, the one who doesn't need help. He stepped closer, and the flowers bent toward him as he passed. But recognition isn't the same as love, is it? They love you, yes. But they love each other more. Naruto and Sasuke, that bond transcends everything. You're the third wheel. The support. Essential, but never the center. The words cut, because they held truth. Sakura had spent her life measuring herself against that bond, accepting her role as healer and supporter, telling herself it was enough. Most days, she believed it. You're wrong, she said, but her voice wavered. Am I? Izanagi gestured, and the scene shifted. Now they stood in a hospital room, watching a younger Sakura operate on a dying patient. Naruto and Sasuke were there, but they weren't watching her, they were arguing with each other, their attention consumed by their own conflict. The patient died. Sakura wept. They didn't notice. Every time you saved them, every time you pulled them back from the brink, did they ever truly see you? Did they ever understand what it cost you? Izanagi's voice was soft, sympathetic. You gave them everything. They gave you gratitude. Which is not the same as love. Sakura wanted to argue, wanted to summon the fury that had carried her through 100 battles. But the images kept coming, moments of being overlooked, moments of being taken for granted, moments when her sacrifices were simply absorbed into the narrative of Naruto and Sasuke's epic friendship. I'm not trying to turn you against them, Izanagi said. I'm trying to show you that you deserve more. You deserve to be seen. To be valued for yourself, not just for what you do for others. And you can give me that? Her voice was bitter. I can give you the opportunity to find it. To step out of their shadow and into your own light. He extended a hand. Join me. Not as a soldier, as an advisor. A healer for a new world. In my order, every role is essential. Every person is valued for their unique contribution. You would never be overlooked again. Sakura stared at his hand. The offer was seductive, precisely calibrated to hit every insecurity she'd spent years suppressing. To be seen. To be valued. To be essential, not just supportive. And yet. I remember something, she said quietly. A moment you didn't show me. Izanagi's eyes flickered. When we were fighting Kagaya. I was useless, completely useless. Out of my depth against a god. And Naruto, in the middle of everything, with the fate of the world on his shoulders, stopped to tell me that I was essential. That without me, they would have died 100 times over. That my healing wasn't just support, it was the foundation they built everything on. She looked up, meeting his fractal gaze. He saw me. In the middle of a war, he saw me. And he's seen me every day since. Not as a support, not as a third wheel, but as a friend. As family. Your carefully selected memories don't change that. For a moment, just a moment, something like respect flickered in Izanagi's eyes. Then the dream shattered, and Sakura woke in her office, gasping, tears streaming down her face. But she was free. The attacks continued, each targeted at a different person, a different vulnerability. But Tsuchikage was shown visions of his predecessors being betrayed by Konoha. The Mizukage was offered the names of hidden spies within her own village. The Reikage was tempted with the power to finally surpass his legendary predecessors. Each resisted. Each reported the attempt to the council. And each report, shared openly, strengthened the bonds between them. He's getting desperate, Shikamaru observed during a strategy session. His isolation tactic failed, so now he's trying corruption. When that fails, he'll have to try something else. Something worse, Kakashi said quietly. He'd arrived that morning with intelligence from Konoha's networks. We've confirmed at least 3 villages in minor nations have been completely compromised. Not destroyed, taken over. The leaders are still in place, but they're not themselves. Their memories have been rewritten. They're puppets. That's how he builds his army, Sasuke said. Not by recruiting, but by converting. He doesn't need loyal soldiers, he needs bodies that follow orders. Empty vessels. Naruto felt the weight of the news settle on his shoulders. 3 villages. Thousands of people, their identities erased, their lives stolen. It was a different kind of violence than battlefield death, slower, quieter, but just as final. We need to stop him before he does it to a major nation, Naruto said. Before he takes over a Kage. We need to find him first, Shikamaru countered. And we can't. His pocket dimensions are undetectable. He could be anywhere, everywhere, nowhere. Sasuke was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. I can find him. Everyone turned. The memories he left me, they're not just a map of his mind. They're a connection. A thread. If I follow it, if I push hard enough, I can trace it back to its source. That's exactly what he wants, Kakashi said sharply. He left those memories for a reason. It's a trap. Probably. Sasuke's voice was calm. But it's also an opportunity. If I go in, if I let him pull me close, I can gather intelligence we can't get any other way. I can learn his plans, his weaknesses, his next moves. You'll be alone, Gaara said. In his territory, under his control. No. Naruto's voice cut through the room. Not alone. Sasuke looked at him. Naruto. You're not going alone. We're not doing that again. Ever. Naruto's eyes were steady, unwavering. If you go, I go. If it's a trap, we spring it together. If he wants a connection, he gets 2. Splitting our strength, Shikamaru began. Is better than losing Sasuke. Naruto didn't shout, didn't plead. He simply stated a fact. He's not expendable. None of us are. We go together, or we find another way. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken things. Sasuke's expression was unreadable, but something shifted in his eyes. Kakashi looked at his former students and saw, perhaps for the first time, not children he trained, but men who had surpassed him in ways that mattered more than power. Then we plan for two, Shikamaru said finally, reaching for a scroll. If you're going into the lion's den, you're going with more than just each other. You're going with every advantage we can give you. The plan took shape over 3 days. Sasuke would use his connection to Izanagi's memories as a beacon, a way to locate the entrance to the pocket dimension. Naruto would accompany him, his sage senses providing early warning and his bond with Kurama ensuring they couldn't be easily separated. A strike team, Kakashi, Gaara, and a rotating squad of elite jonin would wait at the nearest physical location, ready to extract them if things went wrong. It was risky. It was desperate. It was the only option they had. On the night before they left, Naruto found Sasuke sitting alone on the ramparts of the samurai hall, staring at the frozen sea. You should be resting, Naruto said, sitting beside him. So should you. They sat in silence for a while, the cold wind pulling at their clothes. Below them, the lights of the samurai village flickered like earthbound stars. I've been thinking about what he said, Sasuke finally murmured. In the cavern. About me being controlled by my emotions my whole life. About never truly choosing. That's not true. Parts of it are. Sasuke's voice was quiet, reflective. I spent years letting hatred control me. Then I spent years letting guilt control me. I've never just been. Just existed as myself, without some overwhelming force pushing me in a direction. Naruto considered this. Maybe that's what it means to be human. We're always being pushed by something: love, hate, fear, hope. The trick isn't to stop feeling those things. The trick is to choose which ones you listen to. Sasuke glanced at him. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You were just too busy brooding to notice. A sound escaped Sasuke, something between a snort and a laugh. It was small, but it was real. Tomorrow, Sasuke said, we might not come back. I know. If I hesitate in there, if I freeze, if I can't move, you have to leave me. You have to. No. Naruto's voice was firm. I'm not leaving you again. Not ever. If you freeze, I'll carry you. If you can't move, I'll move for both of us. We're not doing the sacrifice play, Sasuke. We're doing the survival play. Together. Sasuke looked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Together. The entrance to the pocket dimension was exactly where Sasuke's memory said it would be, a cave in the mountains north of the Land of Iron, its entrance hidden by a seal so old that the rock had grown around it. Naruto and Sasuke stood before it as dawn broke, the sky behind them painted in shades of gold and rose. Last chance to change your mind, Sasuke said. Not a chance. Naruto stepped forward, his hand outstretched. Let's go see a king. They touched the seal together, and the world folded. Inside, the pocket dimension was exactly as Naruto remembered, a vast cavern lit by no visible source, its walls pulsing with the slow heartbeat of ancient chakra. At its center, on his throne of obsidian, sat Izanagi. His fractal eyes opened as they approached, and something like surprise flickered in their depths. You came back, he said, his gaze moving between them. Both of you. Willingly. We did. Naruto stopped a respectful distance from the throne, Sasuke at his side. We came to talk. Talk. Izanagi's lips curved. You came to my domain, to the heart of my power, to talk? We came to understand. Naruto's voice was steady. You've spent millennia building this order, this control, this vision. You've convinced yourself it's the only way. We want to know why. We want to know what made you this way. Izanagi was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, less certain, more human. What made me this way? He stood, descending from his throne. I will show you. But be careful what you ask for. Some truths cannot be unlearned. He raised his hand, and the cavern dissolved around them. They stood now in a different place, a village, ancient and primitive, built of wood and stone. Before them, a young man with Izanagi's face but younger eyes watched as his brothers prepared for battle. This was the first war, Izanagi's voice came from everywhere. Not the last, the first. We were not Uchiha then. We were simply a family, trying to survive. My brothers and I, we had a gift, eyes that saw more than others. The clan elders called it a blessing. They were wrong. The scene shifted. Now they stood on a battlefield, bodies everywhere. The young Izanagi knelt beside a fallen brother, his face streaked with tears. It was a curse. Every time we used our eyes, we saw more clearly the hatred in others. And the more clearly we saw it, the more we feared it. Fear led to preemptive strikes. Strikes led to retaliation. Retaliation led to annihilation. The scene shifted again, faster now, generations of conflict, each worse than the last. I watched everyone I loved die. Not once, not twice, dozens of times. Centuries of it. And I realized, the problem wasn't the enemies. The problem was love itself. Naruto watched the scenes unfold, feeling the weight of millennia of grief. So you decided to eliminate it. I decided to control it. The scene stopped, and they were back in the cavern. Izanagi stood before them, his fractal eyes bright with old pain. If love leads to loss, then the solution isn't to stop loving, it's to make loss impossible. To create a world where nothing can be lost because everything is ordered. Permanent. Eternal. And empty, Sasuke said quietly. Yes. Izanagi's voice was almost sad. Empty. But emptiness doesn't hurt. Emptiness doesn't grieve. Emptiness just is. Naruto looked at him, really looked, past the power and the age and the terrible certainty. He saw a man who had been broken so many times that he'd forgotten what wholeness felt like. A man who had chosen numbness over pain and called it wisdom. I'm sorry, Naruto said. For everything you lost. For everyone who died. For the centuries of grief you've carried alone. Izanagi's eyes flickered. But you're wrong about the solution. Emptiness does hurt. It's the worst hurt of all. It's the hurt of not feeling anything, of not connecting, of being alone even when you're surrounded by order. Naruto stepped forward, closing the distance between them. You don't need to control the world. You need to let yourself grieve. To finally mourn everyone you lost. To accept that pain is part of love, and love is worth the pain. For a long, terrible moment, no one moved. Izanagi's fractal eyes spun faster, faster, as if trying to process something they'd never encountered. Then, slowly, they stopped. You are either the bravest fool I have ever met, Izanagi whispered, or the wisest sage. I cannot tell which. Both, Naruto said, and smiled. Definitely both. Izanagi looked at him, and for the first time since they'd entered the cavern, something human flickered in his ancient eyes. Then the cavern exploded. The explosion was not physical. It was perceptual, a rupture in the fabric of the pocket dimension that sent shockwaves through every mind connected to it. Naruto felt it as a splitting headache, Sasuke as a sudden vertigo, Izanagi as something far more profound, the first crack in a structure he had maintained for millennia. Madara stood at the edge of the cavern, his hands still raised from whatever technique he'd unleashed. His face was unreadable, but his eyes, those deep purple Rinnegan, were fixed on Izanagi with an intensity that bordered on betrayal. You're hesitating, Madara said. His voice was calm, but it carried across the cavern like a blade. He's in your head. Twisting your thoughts. Making you weak. Izanagi turned to face him, and for a moment, his fractal eyes held something like confusion. He's not twisting anything. He's showing me something I forgot. What he's showing you is a lie. A convenient fiction designed to disarm you. Madara stepped forward, his presence filling the space. I know this boy. I've fought him, died by his hand, been resurrected to fight again. His power isn't in his fists, it's in his words. His ability to make you believe that connection matters, that love is enough, that the chaos of emotion is somehow preferable to order. You sound afraid of him, Sasuke observed, his Sharingan spinning. For someone who claims to understand him, you sound very afraid. Madara's gaze snapped to Sasuke. I'm not afraid. I'm experienced. I've seen what his philosophy produces: endless war, endless death, endless cycles of revenge. I've lived it. I've died for it. And I will not let his naive idealism undo the only real solution. The only real solution, Naruto repeated. You mean control. Order. A world where no one chooses anything because there's nothing to choose. Yes. Madara's voice was absolute. A world without pain. Without loss. Without the endless suffering that comes from human connection. You call it empty. I call it peaceful. The two visions hung in the air between them, irreconcilable. Naruto's world of connection and pain. Madara's world of order and emptiness. Izanagi stood between them, his ancient eyes moving from one to the other, and for the first time in millennia, he did not know which path was right. You built this, Naruto said to Izanagi, his voice soft. All of this, the pocket dimensions, the memory manipulation, the centuries of planning. You built it because you were hurt. Because you couldn't bear to lose anyone else. But look at what it's cost you. You're standing in an empty room, in an empty world, with only Madara for company. Is that really better than the alternative? Is that really peace? Izanagi's fractal eyes flickered. The patterns within them, stable for so long, began to waver. He's manipulating you, Madara said, his voice sharper now. Can't you see? He's using your own pain against you. He's making you doubt everything you've built. No. Izanagi's voice was quiet, almost wondering. He's making me remember why I built it. The pain, the loss, it was real. It was unbearable. But it was also mine. It was proof that I had loved. That I had lived. Madara stared at him, and for the first time, something like fear flickered in his eyes. Not fear of Naruto or Sasuke, fear of losing his ally, his only remaining connection to a world he understood. You're making a mistake, Madara said. A fatal one. Perhaps. Izanagi turned to face him fully. But it's my mistake to make. For the first time in millennia, it's my choice. The cavern trembled. The pocket dimension, held together by Izanagi's will for thousands of years, began to shudder at its foundations. The strike team felt it from outside, a ripple in the fabric of reality that made even Gaara's sand hesitate. Kakashi's single eye widened as he sensed the chakra signatures within the pocket dimension flare and shift. Something's happening, he said. Something big. Do we go in? One of the Jonin asked, hand on a weapon. No. Kakashi's voice was firm. We wait. They knew the risks. If we rush in now, we could make things worse. Gaara said nothing, but his sand coiled tighter around him, ready to move at the slightest signal. Inside, the confrontation had shifted. Madara stood alone now, Izanagi having moved to stand with Naruto and Sasuke not as an ally, but as something more complicated. A seeker. A questioner. You don't have to fight, Naruto said to Madara. You never did. You could have found another way after Hashirama died. You could have grieved and moved on and built something new. Instead, you chose to let your pain define you. Madara's jaw tightened. You dare. I dare because someone has to. Naruto's voice was firm but not angry. You're not evil, Madara. You're just broken. Like him. He gestured to Izanagi. Like so many of us. The difference is, we found people who helped us put the pieces back together. You never let anyone close enough to try. For a long, terrible moment, Madara said nothing. His Rinnegan stared at Naruto with an intensity that should have been crushing. But Naruto had faced gods. He had faced his own death. He could face this. Then Madara moved. Not toward Naruto, toward Izanagi. His hand shot out, crackling with dark chakra, aimed at the ancient Uchiha's chest. If you won't fulfill your purpose, Madara snarled, then I'll take your power and do it myself. Time seemed to slow. Naruto's reflexes screamed at him to move, to intervene, but he was too far. Sasuke's Rinnegan flared as he tried to warp space, to interpose himself, but Madara was too fast. Izanagi looked at the incoming attack with something like acceptance. After millennia of existence, after countless plans and schemes and manipulations, perhaps this was the ending he deserved. But the blow never landed. Instead, Sasuke appeared between them, not teleporting, but stepping through a portal he'd torn in reality itself. His hand caught Madara's wrist, the force of the impact sending shockwaves through the cavern. No, Sasuke said quietly. Not him. Not like this. Madara stared at him, genuinely surprised. You would defend him? After what he did to you? After he rewired your brain, planted memories in your head, tried to turn you against everything you love? Yes. Sasuke's voice was steady. Because he's Uchiha. Because he's family. Because if we keep killing each other every time someone makes a mistake, we'll never break the cycle. You taught me that, Madara. By trying to end it, you showed me it would never end. For a heartbeat, something shifted in Madara's expression. Recognition? Regret? It was impossible to tell. Then his other hand came up, a black rod forming from his palm, aimed at Sasuke's heart. Then you'll die with him. The rod never reached its target. Naruto was there, a golden chakra arm wrapping around Sasuke and pulling him clear, another arm deflecting the strike. Kurama's power blazed through the cavern, pushing back against the oppressive darkness of Madara's chakra. It doesn't have to be this way, Naruto said, his voice strained with effort. You can stop. You can choose something different. Madara looked at him, really looked, and for a moment, the mask slipped. Beneath the centuries of pain and ambition, beneath the god complex and the megalomania, there was just a man who had lost everyone he loved and never learned how to grieve. I don't know how, Madara whispered. It was the most honest thing he had ever said. Naruto extended his hand. Then learn. With us. It's not too late. Madara stared at the offered hand. His own hand, still raised to strike, trembled slightly. The cavern shook again, harder this time. Cracks appeared in the walls, spilling not light but darkness, the void between dimensions, hungry and cold. The pocket dimension is collapsing, Izanagi said, his voice calm despite everything. My concentration is broken. We have minutes, perhaps less. Then we go, Naruto said. All of us. He looked at Madara, hand still extended. Madara looked at the hand, then at Naruto's face, then at the cracks spreading across the walls. Slowly, impossibly, he lowered his arm. I don't trust you, he said. I know. I don't believe in your vision. I know. But I don't want to die in the void. Madara's voice was bitter, but there was something else beneath it, relief, perhaps. Or exhaustion. Take us out of here. Naruto grabbed his wrist, and Sasuke grabbed Izanagi's, and Kurama's power enveloped them all as the pocket dimension collapsed into nothing. They emerged in the mountain cave, gasping, trembling, alive. The strike team surrounded them instantly, weapons drawn, until Kakashi's voice cut through the tension. Stand down. The Jonin hesitated, looking at Madara Uchiha, the ghost of wars past, the architect of so much death, standing among them, unarmed, exhausted, human. Stand down, Kakashi repeated. That's an order. Slowly, reluctantly, the weapons lowered. Gaara-san had already surrounded Naruto and Sasuke, checking for injuries. Sakura, who had somehow arrived with the strike team, pushed through to begin her own assessment. But her eyes kept flicking to Madara, to Izanagi, to the impossibility of what she was seeing. You brought them back, she said to Naruto. It wasn't a question. I brought everyone back, Naruto corrected. That's the point. Madara stood apart from the group, his Rinnegan taking in the cave, the snow outside, the sky visible through the entrance. It had been decades since he'd seen a natural sky, felt real wind on his face. It was disorienting. This changes nothing, he said quietly. I still believe what I believed. Probably, Naruto agreed. But believing something and acting on it are different things. For now, just be here. Breathe. See what happens. Izanagi sat on a rock, his fractal eyes dimmed, his presence diminished. The collapse of his pocket dimension had cost him not just power, but something more fundamental. The structure he'd built around himself, the walls that had protected him from feeling for millennia, were gone. He felt everything. The cold of the cave. The fear of the Jonin watching him. The hope radiating from Naruto like heat from a sun. It was unbearable. It was glorious. You were right, he said to Naruto, his voice barely a whisper. About the emptiness. It does hurt. It hurts more than any loss I ever experienced. Naruto moved to sit beside him. Yeah. It does. But it also means you're alive. Really alive. For the first time in a long time. Izanagi looked at him, this boy, this impossible boy who had walked into his domain and shattered his certainties with nothing but compassion and stubbornness. What happens now? He asked. Naruto smiled. It was tired, but it was real. Now we figure it out together. All of us. That's the only way it works. The journey back to the samurai hall took 3 days. Madara walked in silence, surrounded by Jonin who never quite relaxed their guard. Izanagi walked beside Naruto, asking questions about the world he'd been observing but never truly experiencing. Sasuke ranged ahead and behind, his Rinnegan watching for threats that never materialized. On the second night, camped in a mountain valley, Sakura approached Madara. He sat apart from the others, staring at the stars. I'm not going to attack you, he said without turning. You can stop hovering. I'm not hovering. I'm observing. She sat down a respectful distance away. Your chakra network is unusual. The combination of Hashirama's cells and your own modifications, it shouldn't be stable. But it is. Madara glanced at her. Are you offering to examine me? I'm offering to understand. There's a difference. She pulled out a small notebook. I've spent years studying the effects of Hashirama's cells on living tissue. The rejection rate is nearly. You're the only successful long-term integration I've ever seen. I'd like to know how. For a long moment, Madara said nothing. Then, slowly, he began to speak. Not about his techniques or his plans, about his body, his modifications, the price he'd paid for power. Sakura listened, took notes, asked questions. It was, perhaps, the most normal conversation Madara had had in decades. On the third morning, as they approached the samurai hall, Izanagi stopped walking. Naruto stopped with him. I don't know what I am now, Izanagi said quietly. I've been the architect for so long that I've forgotten how to be anything else. Your world, this world, I don't know how to live in it. Naruto considered this. Then don't live in it yet. Just be in it. Watch. Learn. Feel. The rest will come. And if it doesn't? Naruto smiled. Then we'll figure it out together. That's what family does. Izanagi looked at him, this boy who called everyone family, who saw connection everywhere, who refused to give up on anyone. And for the first time in millennia, he believed. The samurai hall received them with a mixture of relief and terror. Madara Uchiha, alive and apparently allied, was enough to make even Mifune pause. Izanagi, the ancient king, was beyond anyone's experience. But Naruto's presence, his calm assurance, his absolute certainty that this was right, it held them together. The Kage convened again that night. This time, the circle was larger. Madara and Izanagi sat apart, but they sat, and that was enough. I don't trust them, the Raikage said bluntly. I don't trust either of them. They've spent centuries planning our destruction. I know. Naruto's voice was steady. I don't trust them completely either. But I trust that people can change. I have to. Otherwise, everything I've ever believed is a lie. The Tsuchikage shifted uncomfortably. You're asking a lot. I'm asking everything. That's what this war requires. Naruto looked around the circle, meeting each Kage's eyes in turn. Izanagi and Madara have information we need about ancient techniques, about hidden weaknesses, about the true history of chakra. They also have power we can use. Rejecting them because of past sins is exactly what the old system would do. The system that led to endless war. We have to be better. The Mizukage spoke quietly. And if they betray us? Then we deal with it. Together. Naruto's voice hardened slightly. But we don't punish them for crimes they haven't committed yet. We give them a chance. That's what peace looks like. Silence. Then, slowly, Gaara nodded. Mifune inclined his head. The other Kage, one by one, followed. It wasn't trust. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was a beginning. Later that night, Naruto stood on the ramparts alone, watching the stars. The weight of the last weeks pressed on him, the decisions, the risks, the impossible hope that he was doing the right thing. You're wondering if you've made a mistake, Kurama said quietly. I'm wondering if I'm fooling myself. If my belief in people is just naivety dressed up as wisdom. It might be. It might also be the only thing that saves us all. The fox's voice was uncharacteristically gentle. I've seen a lot of leaders in my time. Most of them ruled through fear, through power, through control. You're the first who rules through faith. It's terrifying. It's also, I think, the only way that actually works. Naruto was quiet for a long moment. Then, softly, he said, thanks, old friend. Don't thank me. Just don't prove me wrong. Footsteps behind him. Sasuke, as always, appearing without sound. You should sleep, Sasuke said. So should you. They stood together in the darkness, two men who had fought and bled and died for each other, who had found their way back from the edge of oblivion more times than either could count. Do you think it'll work? Sasuke asked. Bringing them in? Trusting them? Naruto thought about it. Not the easy answer, the hopeful answer, the real answer. I don't know. But I know that the alternative, killing them, locking them away, treating them as enemies forever, that definitely doesn't work. We've tried that. For centuries. It's never worked. He turned to look at Sasuke. So we try something new. We try trust. We try connection. We try giving people the chance to be better than their worst moments. Sasuke met his gaze. And if they prove you wrong? Then we deal with it. Together. Naruto smiled slightly. That's what family does. Sasuke almost smiled back. Almost. The Raikage wants to post extra guards outside their quarters. Let him. It'll make him feel better. It won't matter if they really want to escape, but it'll make him feel better. And you? What do you want? Naruto looked back at the stars. I want to sleep for a week. I want to eat ramen that isn't ration packs. I want to sit in the Hokage's office and do boring paperwork and pretend that the world isn't always ending. He paused. But mostly, I want this to work. I want to prove that there's another way. That we don't have to keep fighting forever. Sasuke nodded slowly. That's a lot to want. Yeah. Naruto's voice was tired but steady. But I've never been good at wanting small things. They stood together until dawn, watching the stars fade, waiting for whatever came next. In a room in the samurai hall, Madara sat on the floor, his back against the wall. Across from him, Izanagi sat in similar posture. They had not spoken since arriving. Finally, Madara broke the silence. What now? Izanagi considered the question. It was, he realized, the first time in millennia that he didn't have an answer prepared. I don't know, he said honestly. I've never not known before. Madara was quiet for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. It was a dry sound, humorless but real. Neither have I. And I hate it. Yes. Izanagi's fractal eyes, dimmer now but still present, met Madara's Rinnegan. But perhaps that's the point. Perhaps the not knowing is where we're meant to be. Perhaps. Madara looked away. Or perhaps we're both fools who've been disarmed by a boy with a big heart and no sense of self-preservation. Izanagi almost smiled. Perhaps both. They sat in silence after that, two ancient warriors, stripped of their certainties, facing an unknown future. It was terrifying. It was also, in a way neither could quite articulate, the most alive either had felt in centuries. Outside, the sun rose over the mountains, and a new day began. The council chamber was silent as Naruto finished speaking. His words hung in the air, simple and profound: we build something new. Together. Or we die trying to preserve something that's already broken. The Kage sat motionless, each lost in their own calculations. The Raikage's fingers drummed on the table, a steady, rhythmic beat that spoke of suppressed energy. But Tsuchikage stared at the map before him as if it might offer answers. The Mizukage's eyes moved between Naruto and the two ancient Uchiha seated against the wall. Gato waited, as he always did, for Naruto to show him the way. Mifune spoke first, his aged voice carrying the weight of centuries of samurai tradition. You're asking us to abandon everything we know. Every structure, every hierarchy, every assumption about how power works. I'm asking you to evolve, Naruto replied. The samurai survived because they adapted. When shinobi rose, you didn't try to destroy them, you found a new purpose. A new role. That's what we need now. All of us. And them? The Raikage gesture encompassed Madara and Izanagi. What role do they play in this new world? Naruto turned to look at the two Uchiha. Madara's expression was unreadable, but his eyes, those ancient, terrible eyes, held something that might have been anticipation. Izanagi sat perfectly still, his fractal gaze fixed on some middle distance, as if seeing things no one else could. They're architects, Naruto said. Of destruction, yes. But also of systems. Of structures. They understand power in ways we don't. If we can channel that understanding, if we can point it at building rather than breaking, there's no one more valuable. And if they break instead? The Mizukage's voice was soft but sharp. Then we stop them. Together. Naruto met her gaze. But we don't punish them for crimes they haven't committed. We don't build our new world on the same fear that destroyed the old one. The silence stretched. Then, slowly, Gaara rose. I trust Naruto, he said simply. Not because he's always right, he's not. But because he's always honest. If he says this is the way, I'll follow. One by one, the other Kage nodded. Not with enthusiasm, with the grudging acceptance of leaders who had run out of better options. Mifune stood last. Then let's begin. We have much to discuss, and little time. The discussions lasted 3 days. They argued about everything: borders, resources, military command structures, succession protocols, the role of tailed beasts, the fate of ancient techniques, the treatment of defectors, the definition of justice. They fought, they compromised, they nearly walked out half a dozen times. But they stayed. Madara spoke rarely, but when he did, his words carried weight. He had seen empires rise and fall. He knew which structures crumbled and which endured. His advice was cold, calculated, and utterly invaluable. Izanagi spoke even less, but his observations were deeper. He understood not just systems but people, the fears that drove them, the hopes that sustained them, the breaking points that no structure could survive. His fractal eyes, still dimmed from the collapse of his pocket dimension, saw patterns the others missed. On the third night, they reached agreement. It was not a treaty, treaties could be broken. It was not an alliance, alliances could shift. It was something new, a compact. A promise. Not between villages or governments, but between people. Between Naruto and Gaara, between Mifune and the Raikage, between Madara and Sasuke, between Izanagi and a world he had spent millennia trying to control. We'll need a name for it, the Tsuchikage said, exhausted but satisfied. Does it need a name? Naruto asked. Everything needs a name. It's how we know it's real. Naruto thought about it. Then, slowly, he smiled. The Fellowship of the Dawn. Because it's a new day. And we're in it together. No one laughed. No one mocked. They simply nodded, one by one, and the fellowship was born. The return to Konoha was different from the departure. Naruto flew most of the way, Kurama's chakra carrying him over the mountains while Sasuke rode beside him on a summon hawk. Below, the others made their way by ground, Madara walking among them, Izanagi observing everything with new eyes. They arrived at the village gates as evening fell. The guard on duty, the same Haruki who had waved them through weeks ago, stared at the approaching group with an expression that shifted from recognition to disbelief to something approaching panic. "It's all right," Naruto said, touching down lightly. "They're with us. Guests of the Hokage." Haruki swallowed hard. "Lord Hokage, that's Madara Uchiha." "I know." Naruto's voice was calm. "He's also a guest. Treat him with respect, and he'll do the same. I promise." The promise was enough. It had to be. Haruki stepped aside, and the fellowship entered Konoha. Word spread faster than fire. By the time they reached the Hokage Tower, half the village had turned out to stare. Madara Uchiha, the ghost of legend, walking through their streets. An ancient king with impossible eyes, looking at their homes and shops and children with something like wonder. And Naruto, their Hokage, walking at the front as if this were the most natural thing in the world. Shikamaru met them at the tower entrance, his expression carefully neutral. "You have a lot of explaining to do." "I know." Naruto grinned. "Get everyone together. The real work starts now." The weeks that followed were chaos. Not the chaos of war, the chaos of creation. Of building something that had never existed before. Madara was assigned quarters in a secure but comfortable building, guarded by rotating teams of ANBU who never quite relaxed. He didn't seem to mind. He spent his days in the library, reading histories of the years he'd missed, or walking the village streets at night, observing the life he had tried to end. Izanagi requested a small room with a window overlooking the training grounds. He sat there for hours, watching children learn to throw shuriken, watching teams practice formations, watching life continue in all its messy, chaotic glory. Occasionally, Naruto would visit, and they would talk about the old world, the new world, the spaces between. "He's not what I expected," Sakura admitted one evening, after treating Madara for a minor chakra imbalance. "He's almost normal. When he's not planning world domination." "Almost normal is a good start," Naruto replied. Sasuke spent time with both ancient Uchiha, exploring the memories Izanagi had planted and the history Madara carried. It was difficult, every conversation brought up old wounds, old hatreds, old griefs. But slowly, carefully, they began to build something like understanding. "The clan was never just one thing," Sasuke said one night, sitting with Naruto on the Hokage monument. "We were warriors and poets, tyrants and protectors, monsters and saints. Izanagi showed me the worst of us. Madara showed me the best. Neither was the whole truth." "So what's the whole truth?" Naruto asked. Sasuke was quiet for a long moment. "That we're human. Just like everyone else. Our eyes let us see more, feel more, suffer more, but they don't make us different. Just more intense." Naruto smiled. "That's pretty profound." "Shut up." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the village below. It was peaceful. For now, that was enough. The first test came 3 months later. A faction within the Land of Earth, unhappy with the new compact, attempted to secede. They declared themselves independent, raised an army, and threatened to attack anyone who interfered. The Tsuchikage, still young and uncertain, called for help. The fellowship responded not as 5 villages but as one. Konoha sent supplies and medical support. Kumo sent intelligence assets. Kiri sent naval blockade forces. Suna sent Gaara himself, his sand a visible deterrent. And the samurai sent advisors, their ancient wisdom guiding the negotiations. Madara watched from a distance, observing the coordination, the trust, the willingness to sacrifice for a common good. It was everything he had once believed impossible. "You're impressed," Izanagi observed, appearing beside him. "I'm surprised." Madara's voice was careful. "They're actually doing it. Working together. Without a common enemy." Perhaps the common enemy was always ourselves. Our suspicion. Our fear. Our refusal to trust. Izanagi's fractal eyes followed the movement of troops below. "Naruto didn't defeat me with power. He defeated me with compassion. With the one thing I had spent millennia eliminating from myself. And now?" Izanagi was quiet for a moment. "Now I'm learning what I lost. It's painful. It's disorienting. It's also worth it." Madara looked at him, really looked, for the first time since they'd met in that forgotten shrine. "You've changed." "Yes." Izanagi met his gaze. "So can you." The words hung between them. Madara said nothing, but something shifted in his expression. Not acceptance, not yet. But possibility. The secession crisis ended without bloodshed. The faction, seeing the united front against them, negotiated a settlement that gave them limited autonomy within the existing structure. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever was, but it was peaceful. It was proof that the compact worked. Naruto returned to Konoha exhausted but elated. The fellowship had passed its first test. There would be others, harder ones, more dangerous ones, but they had proven it was possible. That night, a small group gathered on the Hokage monument. Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, Kakashi, Shikamaru. Gaara, who had stayed for the celebration. Madara and Izanagi, standing slightly apart but present. They brought food and drink and sat under the stars, talking about nothing and everything. I used to dream about this, Sakura said quietly. All of us together. At peace. It's not peace, Sasuke corrected. It's a pause. There will be more battles. More losses. More pain. Probably. Naruto's voice was calm. But that's okay. Because we'll face them together. And we'll keep building something better, one piece at a time. Madara spoke for the first time that evening. You really believe that? After everything, after me, after him, after all the evidence that the world is cruel and meaningless, you really believe it can be better? Naruto looked at him. I have to. Not because it's easy, but because the alternative is giving up. And I've never been good at that. Madara was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Neither was Hashirama, he said quietly. I see now why he believed in you. It was the closest Madara would ever come to an apology. Naruto accepted it as such. The night deepened. One by one, the others drifted away, Sakura to the hospital, Shikamaru to his wife, Kakashi to his books, Gaara to his sand. Sasuke stayed, sitting beside Naruto as they had so many times before. What happens now? Sasuke asked. Naruto considered the question. Below them, Konoha slept peacefully. The village he had sworn to protect. The home he had built. Now we live, he said. We wake up tomorrow and do the work. We solve problems. We help people. We make mistakes and fix them. We keep going. That's not very dramatic. Naruto laughed. Drama's overrated. Give me boring any day. Sasuke almost smiled. You'd be bored in a week. Probably. Naruto leaned back, looking at the stars. But I'd rather be bored and at peace than excited and at war. Wouldn't you? Sasuke thought about it. Thought about all the battles, all the blood, all the years of hatred and revenge. Thought about the quiet of this moment, sitting with his best friend, watching over a village that had finally become home. Yeah, he said quietly. I would. They sat in silence until dawn, two men who had fought gods and demons and each other, who had lost everything and found their way back, who had learned finally, painfully, that peace wasn't a destination. It was a choice. A daily, hourly, moment-by-moment choice to keep believing, keep trusting, keep building. The sun rose over Konoha, painting the village in gold. And for the first time in longer than anyone could remember, the dawn felt like a beginning rather than a reprieve. In a small room overlooking the training ground, Izanagi watched the sunrise. His fractal eyes, still dimmed from their former glory, reflected the light in patterns that shifted and flowed. For millennia, he had watched the sun rise from inside his pocket dimension, a simulation of light that never warmed, never changed. This was different. This was real. He pressed a hand to his chest, feeling his heartbeat, a rhythm he had suppressed for so long it had become foreign. It was uneven. Imperfect. Human. You're still here. Madara's voice came from the doorway. Where else would I be? Madara moved to stand beside him, looking out at the village below. I don't know. Planning. Scheming. Building another dimension. Izanagi almost smiled. I'm tired of planning. Tired of scheming. Tired of building walls. He paused. I'm tired, Madara. For the first time in millennia, I'm simply tired. Madara was quiet for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, he sat down on the floor, his back against the wall. Then rest. Izanagi looked at him, this man who had been his ally, his student, his disappointment, his hope. You're offering me rest? I'm offering you company. Rest is your own affair. Madara's voice was gruff, but there was something beneath it. Something almost gentle. Izanagi sat beside him, and together they watched the sun climb higher over a world they had both tried to control, both failed to save, and both finally were learning to simply inhabit. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't forgiveness. It was something smaller and larger at once, presence. Being here, now, without the weight of millennia pressing down. For now, it was enough. In the Hokage's office, Naruto sat at his desk, surrounded by paperwork. The mountain of it never seemed to shrink, no matter how many hours he worked. But today, it didn't feel oppressive. It felt like proof that the village was alive, that people were living their lives, that problems were small enough to be solved with forms rather than swords. Kurama stirred within him. You're in a good mood. I'm alive. My friends are alive. The village is standing. Naruto signed another form, setting it on the finished pile. What's not to be happy about? The paperwork? Naruto laughed. Okay, fine. But even paperwork is better than war. Debatable. A knock at the door. Shikamaru entered without waiting, a scroll in his hand. Trouble, he said. Naruto's heart clenched, but he forced himself to stay calm. What kind? Minor. A border dispute between two trading partners in the land of rivers. Both sides are threatening to bring in mercenaries. It could escalate. Naruto nodded, reaching for a blank form. Then we escalate de-escalation. Send a mediator. Offer resources. Remind them that the fellowship guarantees fair treatment. Shikamaru's lips twitched. You're getting good at this. Getting? I've always been good at this. You just never noticed because I was too busy saving the world. Shikamaru handed over the scroll. I'll draft a response. You sign it, we send it, crisis averted. See? Peace isn't so hard. Shikamaru paused at the door. Naruto. Yeah? It's working. The fellowship. The compact. All of it. He didn't wait for a response, just slipped out, leaving Naruto alone with his paperwork and his thoughts. Naruto sat for a moment, letting the words sink in. It's working. After everything, after wars and losses and impossibly long odds, it was actually working. He looked out the window at the village below. Children ran through the streets, laughing. Vendors called out their wares. Teams gathered at the mission desk, ready for whatever the day would bring. Normal life. Peaceful life. The life he had fought for, bled for, almost died for. Worth it, he thought. Every second. He picked up his pen and returned to work. The sun set over Konoha, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and gold. In homes across the village, families gathered for dinner. In the hospital, Sakura finished her rounds and headed home to a quiet apartment she was slowly learning to fill with more than work. In the library, Kakashi turned a page in his book and almost smiled at a particularly bad pun. In a small house on the outskirts, Shikamaru played chess with his son and pretended to let him win. On the Hokage monument, Sasuke sat alone, watching the lights come on one by one. His Rinnegan traced the patterns of chakra below, familiar signatures, beloved signatures, the people who had become his family despite everything. Footsteps behind him. He didn't turn. You're brooding, Naruto said, sitting beside him. I'm observing. Same thing, with you. Sasuke didn't argue. They sat together as the last light faded, as the stars emerged one by one, as the village settled into the gentle rhythm of night. It's beautiful, Sasuke said quietly. From up here. All the lights, all the people. It's beautiful. Yeah. Naruto's voice was soft. It is. Worth fighting for? Naruto looked at him. Always. Sasuke nodded slowly. Good. Because there will be more fighting. More threats. More enemies. I know. And you'll still be here. Still believing. Still trusting. I know that too. Sasuke was quiet for a long moment. Then, so softly Naruto almost missed it, thank you. For what? For not giving up on me. For not giving up on any of us. Sasuke's voice was rough. For being exactly who you are, even when it would have been easier to be someone else. Naruto didn't have words for that. So he did what he always did, he reached out and put a hand on Sasuke's shoulder, and they sat together in the darkness, two men who had found their way home. Below them, Konoha slept. Above them, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns. And somewhere in the village, in a small room with a window, two ancient warriors sat side by side, learning, slowly, painfully, imperfectly, how to be human again. The war was over. The peace had begun. And it was worth everything. In the years that followed, the fellowship grew. Not through conquest or coercion, but through example. Village by village, nation by nation, the old suspicions faded and new connections formed. There were setbacks, betrayals, conflicts, moments when everything seemed on the verge of collapse. But each time, they held. Each time, they chose trust over fear, connection over isolation, hope over despair. Madara never fully embraced Naruto's vision. He remained skeptical, detached, watching from the edges. But he also remained. He never left. He never returned to his old plans. In the end, that was enough. Izanagi became something unexpected, a teacher. His knowledge of ancient techniques, of chakra's deepest secrets, proved invaluable to a new generation of shinobi. He never fully healed, the wounds of millennia don't disappear overnight, but he learned to live with them. To carry them without being crushed. Sasuke eventually took on a role no one had anticipated, ambassador. He traveled between villages, using his Rinnegan to facilitate communication, his Sharingan to read the truth beneath words, his hard-won wisdom to bridge gaps that seemed unbridgeable. He never married, never settled, but he found something he had spent his whole life seeking, purpose without hatred. Sakura revolutionized medicine. Her techniques for treating chakra-based trauma became standard across the elemental nations. She trained thousands of medical nin, each one carrying forward her commitment to healing over harming. She never became Hokage, but she became something rarer, indispensable. Kakashi retired, truly retired, and wrote a book. It was terrible. Everyone bought it anyway. Shikamaru served as Naruto's strategist until his hair turned gray, then served his son, then his son's son. He never stopped planning for the worst, but he also never stopped hoping for the best. The two weren't contradictory, he said. They were complementary. Gaara remained Kazekage for decades, his bond with Naruto a constant thread through the changing tapestry of their world. When he finally stepped down, it was to travel, to see the peace he had helped build, to feel the sand of foreign lands beneath his feet, to simply be. And Naruto? Naruto kept going. Through administrations and elections, through crises and celebrations, through the slow, steady work of building something that would outlast him. He grew old behind that desk, his hair whitening, his face lining, his eyes never losing their light. He saw friends die and children born and grandchildren grow. He saw the fellowship expand to include villages that had once been enemies, nations that had once been myths. He saw peace become not an ideal but a habit, not a dream but a reality. On his last day, surrounded by family and friends and the village he had loved into existence, he smiled. It was worth it, he said. All of it. And then, gently, peacefully, he let go. The village mourned for a year and celebrated for a century. Statues were raised, stories were told, children were named after him. But the truest monument was invisible, the peace that held, the connections that endured, the world that kept choosing trust over fear. In the end, that was enough. That was everything. That was the dream, made real.